And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
All right, let's try this again, people. Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning. We're starting our tour a little late. You guys had an early meal, so no meal at the end of the tour. Here we go. Good morning, everybody. We are live Eastern time, and I'm on the West Coast and the Pacific Coast. At least the light is out right now. So good morning, everybody. UnitedHealthcare CEO murderer arrested. Daniel Penny acquitted. Very interesting stuff. Actually, our title this morning, somehow murderer was taken out. Well, we're back in the game. Here we go. Sorry, everybody, for the technical difficulties, but sometimes got to work through the growing pains. All good. What's up, brother?
Nothing. Glad we're back up. I just got off Children's Health Defense. I think I might do a little monologue later this evening. I don't think I explained myself well and all the legalities, but it was a quick show. It was a quick, just a real quick hit on there. And I just want to explain better what the hell I'm uncovering through this testimony that's been given by members of the NYPD. In regards to the denial of religious rights in the workplace. So I might do a monologue later or sometime this week on it because I just want to get it off my chest, and I don't think I said it well on there. But yeah, I did that. I messed around with this thing. I have no idea what happened this morning. I don't know if it was the browser, if it was a streaming service. I just basically removed everything, put everything back on. I'm glad we're up today. So thank you guys for joining us. And let's get right into it. United, let's go first on the... Want to talk about the Penny acquittal, or you want to talk about the murder?
Semper Fi. Let's go right into the Daniel Penny acquittal. Absolutely. Semper Fi, Marine. Thank you for being there that day and being a good Samaritan. And thank God, American justice system still works. Thank God.
So what do you think about the acquittal? Like, what are your thoughts around it? Do you think it was the right call? Do you see a problem with it? Like, what are your thoughts overall? I mean, I guess you just said it that you're happy with it. I mean, we've been showing support for Daniel Penny, but like, what do you think? What'd you think about him even having to go to trial?
So I put a monologue out myself. I put out a brief video, just about a minute and a half. I think it was maybe 2 minutes long. Obviously, there's no biases here. I just want to say that Daniel Penny is a fellow Marine, so I understand his mindset, the training he's been through. So I believe there is some, even though I don't know him personally, there is a connection there. So I understand the training, I understand the mindset. I understand, and it's very important in the Marine Corps. You learn: don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal. Right? These are things that they talk about: honor, courage, commitment. So just at the core of it, I honor him, and I can tell you this: I think the reality is there's no winners here. It's tragic. 2 lives were changed and altered forever. No matter what the outcome is, 2 lives were changed. Jordan Neely met his tragic and unfortunate demise. And Daniel Penny's life is forever altered. No matter what. This is the Daniel Penny effect. Going forward in his life, he's always going to question his actions. He's going to question himself moving forward. There's no doubt about it. This should have never went to trial in the first place. He should have been covered and protected under Article 35. He has a right to self-defense. I'm not against him being arrested, but he should have never been charged. Yes, the police have to do their job, make the arrest. That's the difference. You're innocent until proven guilty. But once at the courts, that's where the dichotomy is between policing and the court system. The court system should have made the determination immediately based on the preliminary investigation, based on the witnesses, all the information, the prior history of Jordan Neely. And it actually insinuates that these perceived threats were imminent. He should have never been charged. This is completely political. And let's be honest, race plays a huge role in this particular case. If Daniel Penny was not white, if he was not a white male with blonde hair and light skin, we would not be here with this case. If it was a black male on a black male, we would not be here. If it was a black male and the victim or the tragic demise met by the person involved would have been white, it would not have made a difference. But this is completely political. We see it on behalf of BLM. And the bottom line is this: 2 worlds collide that should have never collided. Jordan Neely's family failed him. They never gave him the proper attention that he needed. Jordan Neely failed himself, and the system failed Jordan Neely by not getting him the attention that he needed. It was too late that day that he met Daniel Penny and the rest of the bystanders and strap hangers on that train. There were two other people that assisted Daniel Penny. Clearly, the evidence was there that it was self-defense, and he did not intend to kill him. There's no heroes in this. It's just an outcome. It's actions and consequences. But I support Daniel Penny, Semper Fi, because if not, and even with this case going forward, people are going to think twice and three times before someone takes action. So the question here now is, when do you take action to be a good Samaritan? Do you have to wait, figuratively speaking, until the knife is in the neck? Or do you actually go by your subjective opinion and what your observations are on if someone is an actual threat?
So the photo I'm showing you, this is of Jordan Neely. I agree with you. I think this was a tragedy. I think New York City failed Jordan Neely. They failed Daniel Penny. They failed everybody on the train car that day. They failed New York City. They failed the media. They failed this country. I personally blame this, all of this, I blame on the lack of care and empathy from the people who claim to care and have empathy for Jordan Neely. You know, a lot of elected officials are taking to social media. This post in particular is coming out from Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter said in this post, they said, we need a world where empathy replaces fear, where compassion replaces violence, and where no one's humanity is up for debate. Jordan Neely deserved more. His life, and here's where I take issue with their statement, like all Black lives, held infinite worth. I don't know what that statement means, because like all life, regardless of the color of your skin or what you believe or anything you are, has worth. We honor him by refusing to accept a system that turns away from those in need and rewards those who cause harm. Now, it's not just them taking to, now they're, what would we say, an organization that has questionable integrity and questionable judgment. We've seen that time and time again with Black Lives Matter. So I don't hold them to accountable for their words, but the elected officials taking, specifically elected council member Tiffany Caban, saying that Jordan Neely was lynched and justice wasn't had. AOC coming out saying similar things. A lot of people really bashing the justice system and claiming to have empathy. But yet we pay no attention to the fact that New York City has a $1 billion a year budget to deal with mental health. They also have another $1 billion that they fund towards homeless services. And nobody asks where that money goes. I continuously hear everybody talking about Bill de Blasio and Bill de Blasio's wife and where did the $837 million go, blah, 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 blah. You know what? You know why you don't know? Ask Eric Adams why you don't know. Ask the finance chair, Justin Brannan, why you don't know. Ask Brad Lander, the New York City comptroller, why don't you know? Why was there never an investigation put into place? We had a new administration come into office. New York City Mayor Eric Adams now turned MAGA after his indictment. I didn't hear him call for an investigation. I didn't hear Brad Lander call for an investigation. I didn't hear New York City Council or the finance chair call for an investigation. What did I see? I saw Eric Adams put out a blueprint. Literally, if you look at his blueprint, he says, yeah, you know, we had some problems with the Thrive. So we decided to rename it, and I'm going to fund them. I forget the exact amount, but let's say another $10 million. So we're continuously taking tax money, and we don't know where it's going, but I'll tell you where it didn't go. It didn't go to help people like Jordan Neely, who is suffering from mental illness, and it didn't go to help homeless people either. So where exactly did it go? I don't know. I have no idea, and why we don't know is the fault of New York City, who failed all of us. And honestly, it's criminal at this point. It's completely criminal on all of their parts.
Good morning, Naked Coffee. Great comment here. Good morning. Sorry this happened to you, by the way. Good morning. Very surprised, pleasantly. A female acquaintance of mine got randomly punched in her face within the last year. 2 other men intervened and corrected. Well, absolutely. That's the whole point. Even with this case, and even the fact that Daniel Penny, that was a tongue twister. Even the fact that Daniel Penny was acquitted and found not guilty, I still believe we have the Daniel Penny effect. The fact that this case had to take these measures, actually had to play out, it should never even gotten to this point, is going to cause the Daniel Penny effect. I think this is going to be an effect, not just for you, but for the entire nation. The entire nation has been watching this case. Daniel Penny has received complete discrimination. You know, we talk about discrimination when it comes to OEO. It's one of the things that we have within the New York City Police Department or any hiring process, and you're protected under certain things from discrimination. And one of those is actually military. And what I have seen is white men who are military and former military also receive an extreme amount of discrimination. And Daniel Penny received just that, an extreme amount of discrimination for being a male white. He fits the quintessential appearance of a male white when we hear about white supremacy. Blonde hair, white skin, and he's also a former Marine. So the point is, with the Daniel Penny effect, Naked Coffee's friend that was punched in the face where 2 men stepped in. Will 2 men going forward step in to help a female that was punched in the face? And that's my point. By the way, Naked Coffee, thank you so much for coffee and donuts. $5 to the podcast. Naked Coffee says thanks. I'm saying thank you. Also, thank you for that story. Now, what I'm saying here is my question, and it's always to the leftist, anti-police rhetoric. And what are they trying to do right now? They're trying to create a parallel between Daniel Penny and law enforcement. It's completely inflammatory. They've been trying to create a parallel. Why? Which is why during the press conference you have Eric Garner's mother coming out to speak. So they're trying to create a parallel with the police and Daniel Penny because it's completely inflammatory and it's to get a rise from people to try to make the comparison to law enforcement. And this was completely about being a good Samaritan. And the question here is, will someone be a good Samaritan? And John, this is my point to the leftists, the Democratic, the socialists, these anti-police, these anti-common sense. When is the time to step in? And sometimes, I'm sorry, you talk about compassion. Sometimes violence is the answer, and sometimes violence is compassion. And it's good men that use violence, not because they want to, because they need to when it's necessary. That's why, just as Jordan Peterson says, a man should be dangerous because you make the choice when to be violent. And Daniel Penny made that choice because he's not because he's nice, but because he's good, because he wanted to protect the other people on the train. So that is showing compassion.
Yeah, absolutely. And who I want to give a shout out to? TC, who said BLM, buy large mansions, because that's exactly what they've been doing with all the money they got since 2020. So appreciate it. Naked Coffee, thank you. So we got up on the screen, I got Hawk Newsom. This is immediately upon Daniel Penny being acquitted. He was acquitted on all charges. It literally happened as we shut the stream down yesterday. We went about 3 hours yesterday, so it's a good segue into talking about this today. But this is Hank Newsom. I just want to get your thoughts on Hawk Newsom. Excuse me, not Hank. Hawk Newsom.
We need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
People want to jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud. How about we do the same when they attempt to oppress us?
Right.
I'm tired. We need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
What do you think about Hawk's statements?
How about the paradox here? Let's show compassion. Let's not use violence. That's the message for Daniel Penny when it comes to Jordan Neely, because Daniel Penny is that quintessential discriminated white male, former military, that male that they want to emasculate, right? They want to clip the testicles from white males. But yet we're going to be completely inflammatory and incite violence, talking about us and them and incite violence. What a paradox here. Let's show compassion. But when we don't get what we want, let's use violence. How about that paradox?
Yeah, 100%. Dudley Brothers pointing out, listen, we're going to get on that. You're 100% right. I thought that the NYPD had his name. They didn't. You're 100% right. You could go through that interview. There were a lot of things we were wrong about. We'll get into all that when we get to that segue. But right now, we're just talking about the Daniel Penny acquittal. Yeah, and the hypocrisy is clear as day. We need black vigilantes. Again, Hawk inciting violence. Not one comment was made from all the loud mouths and New York City Mayor Eric Adams, NYPD Chief of Patrol John Schell, NYPD Deputy Commissioner Operations Kaz Daughtry. No one said a word about what Hawk Newsome said here. It's inciting violence. It's literally incitement of violence. Hawk is trying to take over the hustle, the poverty hustle, the race hustle. This was the game put forth by Reverend Al Sharpton, right? What did he do? Never let a good crisis go to waste. What would he do? Any crisis, particularly around Black Death, what would he do? He would get a whole lot of people to march about it. He would latch himself on to the family of the person that was deceased, and he would pressure the city of New York to pay them large sums of money. And how much of it did he take? I don't know, Reverend. How much of it did you take? Why don't you let everybody know? Because those services weren't for free. So this is Reverend Sharpton 2.0. You can meet him right here. His name's Hawk Newsome. He's a rather large gentleman. He pretends like he cares, but in my opinion, it's all pretending. He could really give two shits about Jordan Neely or anybody else, because if he did, he'd be honing on the fact of how New York City failed him. And I understand, listen, the mental health, like I said, mental health runs in my family. So I understand the plight of the family not being able to, where was the father? Where was the mother? Jordan Neely was a grown man. You can't physically control or stop someone who's deranged. It's not how it happens. It's not, does that mean that his father didn't care about him because he was homeless on the street? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Or his family didn't care about him. Doesn't mean that at all. So, and I empathize with the father, but let's really focus in on the issues. How did this happen? Why were New York City residents being even placed in the situation where they had to actually get physical with a mentally ill homeless person? Why are we not focusing on where are these hundreds of millions of dollars going? What are we doing to correct the issue on mental illness on New York City streets, in New York City subways? What is being done currently? What is being funded currently? What successes have they had, these programs that we're giving the money to? What are the metrics we're using to deem these programs a success? Because I'll tell you right now, me looking from the outside, I see the more money we spend, the more homeless and mentally ill people we get. I don't know what the correlation behind that is, but that's just what it is.
Well, I just want to say I'd like to see we got some good retired people, some friends of the podcast. A shout out to Fernando Burgos. He says, "Hey, Eric, keep up the good work. One of my old commanders in the Lower East Side of PSA 4. Shout out. I hope you're enjoying retirement. Good to see you here. I'm glad you're listening." Eddie West, thank you, my brother. Coffee and donuts at the podcast. Here we go. $28. Hope you got your 28s in. Juju, I know you're here. We got a couple other trolls. Looks like Dudley Brother hooked up with Juju. Top of the morning to you, Lieutenant. Submitted by 28 to the finest desk. Say if you both came back to the job, would you continue the podcast? How is the hawk-ass Newsome allowed to operate? He just incited violence publicly. Absolutely. That's the whole point behind this. Hawk Newsome takes every opportunity to incite violence, and he's never held accountable. We see Hawk Newsome never held accountable. Relly Rel never held accountable until they're exposed by this podcast and the atrocities that they commit. It's actually an act of terror. And we'll never see that action by this administration because of the fear and also the pandering when it comes to BLM. It's interesting when we talk about BLM, right, John? Well, let me just go back also because he did ask one more question here. Would we come back to the job? So I would come back to the job as some type of commissioner for the benefit of the rank and file. It would be short term and also to make some extreme changes when it comes to the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Ultimately, that's my mission and focus. And, of course, the disciplinary matrix. But I see this podcast and doing media as our future and our path. So I'm not a religious person, but God put us on this path. And I think it worked out great. You know, being the most complained cop, I'm happy to be here. It's definitely, as I said before, doing policing, law enforcement, or any occupation should be part of your story, not your whole story. So we're retired from that first segment, and the work continues to go on. So I'm enjoying this mission right now. I'm enjoying having these friends and listeners to the podcast. It's opened up new doors, new relationships, new friendships. Now, when we talk about BLM, what's interesting, BLM rants and raves and only gets involved when adverse consequences are met. And BLM is now involved after Jordan Neely met his tragic demise. Where was BLM to stand up and say, hey, Jordan Neely and several other black males have been stricken with mental disease, and we need the city to step in with good services and actually make sure that they get the help that they need before they die. The only time it's involved is when someone met their death, and there's green, not the color black, the color green that's available, and to be the recipients on the end of that. And that's what this is about. Because Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely, those worlds collided because of the failures of Jordan Neely's family, Jordan Neely himself, and also the failures of the system in the city, that people are not getting the proper mental health that they need. And unfortunately, it was too late that day for Daniel Penny to have compassion for Jordan Neely. He had to protect the other bystanders and strap hangers on that train and protect himself because he's a Marine. He made those observations. He saw that Jordan Neely did not fit the baseline, and he was actually accurate in his subjective assessment because Jordan Neely has a prior history of taking action against elderly females, and he's been a danger to society. He was a danger that day. He was a danger to himself. And Daniel Penny did not intend to kill him, but he intended to take action. And unfortunately, when mental health needs are not met, and when you're in that crisis and it resorts to violence, unfortunately, even a punch to the face or any type of force could result in the adverse consequence, including death. We do not know the outcome, and that's why these systems have to be put in place so that these worlds do not collide. And again, I say there's no winners here. Daniel Penny will be affected for his entire life. I'm sure it's not sitting well that he took the life of another. He's a hero for helping out that day, not a hero for taking the life of another. That's just an adverse consequence that no one wanted and no one desired on that typical day. So for Tiffany Caban and BLM to insinuate that Daniel Penny enjoyed this and it's just some type of lynching, it's a complete farce. It's a complete lie. It's smear. It's Penny should sue immediately for that reason. And you know, the bottom line is this: this Daniel Penny effect is real, and it's going to affect the nation forever. And again, this is politics, and it's race baiting that's infected our political justice system. And it's my opinion, the only reason that he was found not guilty is because now we have MAGA Eric. Because if this was pre-indictment Eric Adams, he would have never had a chance. And that's the only reason he had a chance in this political system as we speak.
Yeah, so I have up on the screen, what I have here is a chart by Reza Chowdhury. If you guys aren't following Reza on X, I highly recommend you do. He sourced this from New York City's Office of Management and Budget. And what you see in the blue is you see the Giuliani era, followed by the Bloomberg era, followed by the de Blasio era, followed by the Adams era. And what it is a chart of the money that is being spent on homeless services. So I had said that we're doing about $1 billion a year, and I was actually incorrect when I said that. I was just going off of what I read last time in the budget. But, you know, I guess between what the budget is and what they actually spend must be a lot different. So in about 2005 under Bloomberg, we are spending about $800 million a year in homeless services. Almost immediately upon the de Blasio era, it grows to close to $2 billion a year in homeless services. From almost $3 billion towards the end of de Blasio's 8 years, you could see the sharp rise in the yellow in the de Blasio eras, how it just continuously rises. And then you see an even larger spike under Eric Adams, where we're spending about $4 billion a year for homeless services. You know, and what I find funny about this is I lived on Staten Island under Bloomberg. And, I never really saw any homeless people. Very few. It was a rarity. It was a rarity to see homeless people. And then almost immediately upon Bill de Blasio coming into office, I was like, are we busing homeless onto Staten Island? I was like, where are these people coming from? They're not from Staten Island. They all have accents. And it's like every CVS you go to, every Dunkin' Donuts you go to, every Starbucks you go to, there's homeless outside begging for money. And that started in the de Blasio era. And what else started in the de Blasio era? A huge spike in spending on homeless services. And now today, every time I go back to New York City, I just continuously see more and more homeless on New York City streets. I see more and more encampments everywhere I go. And here's the numbers, clear as day. We're spending more money and we have more homeless. So obviously, just based on this alone, what we've been doing does not work. Continuing to do it is absolute, utter insanity. But instead, what BLM's going to attempt to do, what Tiffany Caban and her progressive Marxist friends, what they're going to attempt to do is paint the system as racist and a failure. Try to continue to divide and conquer all of us and to bring forth in their Marxist strategy of total control, where they're spending $20 billion a year in homeless services, and we're all homeless. And we're all victims of everything. And New York City is completely unaccountable, but all of our money goes to them and their friends.
VSS Ventura is $5. Coffee and donuts. Here we go. A good day, Daniel Penny is free, and BLM is a terrorist organization, money laundering operation. Hawk Newsom is a race hustler and a skirt pansy. Absolutely, he's a race hustler, but even more than that, not only is he a race hustler, because Eric Adams is in government, he's a race hustler also. But Hawk Newsom, in my opinion, is a domestic terrorist because, in fact, he's inciting riots. He's inciting violence. His statements are completely inflammatory. He should be on a domestic terrorist watch list. I don't know if he is. I hope he is. Lone Silencer, shout out to you. Great comment. Homeless services advocate is one of the biggest scams where money is laundered, squandered to a small few, and crumbs go to the actual problem. Might have to put that in the movie Crumbs. You're absolutely right. You know what's interesting about this country? It's actually pretty tough to actually be legitimately just homeless. So there's a huge nexus here between mental health and substance abuse when it comes to homelessness. Because most people that are actually homeless are homeless for those two reasons, or they're suffering, which falls into mental illness. Or a lot of times we have veterans suffering from PTSD or PTSI, how you refer to it. But again, it's all wrapped up into mental illness and, of course, substance abuse. So where are the services? Where is BLM to say we need services for our mentally ill? We need services for those that are substance abuse addicted. Because I tell you right now, there's no color when it comes to mental illness. Whites, Asians, Hispanics, blacks, everyone's families. John, you talked about it before. I've seen it, with fellow veterans. I've seen it with people. I've seen it in my career. People suffering from mental illness. It has no color. And substance abuse addiction has no color also. But yet, Hawk Newsom doesn't see any opportunity, any benefit. Hawk Newsom, Al Sharpton, there's no benefit. None of these lawyers step in to help them out before they die, but they only care when it's too late. You know what? It's quite interesting. Hawk Newsom and BLM and the NYPD upper echelon, they have a lot in common. They only care when someone meets their death. That's the only opportunity to speak on it, and that's the only opportunity that they show any compassion. It's quite interesting when we hear people talk about compassion while simultaneously rooting for violence and talk about us and them and being completely divisive. Nobody should be taking Hawk Newsom seriously. Absolutely not. I mean, he talks like a big tough guy. He talks about violence, and yet my commanding officer and also the ICO at PSA 7, they arrested him. And what did he do? He immediately filed a civilian complaint. He filed a civilian complaint with the Civilian Complaint Review Board. Big tough guy. I mean, this is the guy that we're dealing with. So, again, what I like to reflect back on, and John, I want to know your thoughts on that also. I believe that BLM is trying to create a parallel with Daniel Penny and law enforcement. which is why they brought Eric Garner's mother to this press conference so they could try to create a parallel, so they could start to create and put that driven hatred, that anti-police rhetoric, so that they can create some volume and make some noise. What are your thoughts on that?
They want to bring down the system. The system is systemic and racist. That includes the police. It includes everything. They're even saying that the black mayor is a racist. You know, they're saying it doesn't matter. Like, they want to paint the whole system as systemically racist against black people. That's BLM's thing, and they're doing it under the marching order of elite white liberals. They're the foot soldiers. Regula says it here. BLM, by large mansions, is nothing more than an extension of the liberal political establishment. They're the Democrats' foot soldiers and proxy agitators. Yeah, I mean, what does Hawk Newsom do for a living? Hawk, do you have a job? Does your sister have a job? Does Relly Rel, who was also there, does he have a job? This is his job. What was Reverend Al Sharpton's job for years? What's his job now? Well, now he's a commentator. Now, actually, people, he's good friends with John Schell, him and Morning Joe. They have their little powwows. But listen to it. It's all divisive rhetoric being placed in, and they really had a rather small turnout, I would think. A couple of loud voices, but the turnout was there. I mean, they're continuing to try to pick up steam and fan the flames of racism. But I guess they weren't paying attention to the last election. I don't think they've been paying attention to what's happening. I don't think they see Eric Adams now pretending he's a Republican. I don't think they understand what's happening in this country. People are sick of the nonsense and the way they try to divide us. The media is not on their side this time. So I don't think they're going to get the reach they did. Here's, I think this is Hawk Newsom's sister. Let's see what she's got to say. I'm sure I'm going to lose more brain cells than gain, but here we go.
CHIVONANEWSOME. I'm the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York. I'm a devout Christian. And in my Bible, thou shalt not kill. In the Torah, thou shalt not kill. In Buddhism, not kill a living thing. But America has no moral, no soul. Our bloods have paved the streets of this nation since its inception. It was foolish of us to think that a black man would get justice in the system designed to. My heart bleeds for the Neely family. My heart bleeds for his father, who sat in front of me every single day and prayed for justice for his son. There is no one coming to save black people, or else we wouldn't live in these ghettos, we wouldn't be in these prisons, and we would be further along than we are. We wouldn't be at the absolute bottom. So forgive me for being jaded and cynical, but once we saw those non-white jurors, we knew that this case was over. None of them. Non-white jurors. How could there not be an uproar that the same person who got off Kyle Rittenhouse, who got off O.J. Simpson, was used here? And shame on you, celebrities and politicians who claim not to be racist, because the racists spoke loud and clear. John McCain's daughter, she had something to say. I think she incited a riot for the right. Phil Mickelson, he had something to say. Kid Rock donated $3 million. And if you look on social media, if you look at the hatred spewed across against us, against black people, against a man who was sick, because when there's a crisis of drugs in America, it's only a crisis when it's a white person, an opioid crisis. Jordan was labeled a drug addict and labeled a crackhead. The only crime that Jordan Neely was guilty of was the color of his skin. Come on. But luckily for Daniel Penny, his skin was not like Jordan's, because you honestly wouldn't have seen our face. The NYPD would have arrested him after 3 hours. The justice system would have found him guilty. And shame on this jury. Because to be real, they didn't even try. Once the lesser charge was removed, they came back an hour later and said it was deadlock. Less than an hour and 20 minutes later, they said not guilty. These wonderful white people, I hope they celebrate their Christmas while the Neely family is praying and asking God for comfort. God damn them and goddamn America.
It's all rhetoric to incite violence, to be inflammatory. In the end, she doesn't care because she's a little bit too late. If she really cared, Where was she before? Where was she when Jordan Neely was going through mental psychosis? Where was she when Jordan Neely was looking for his next meal because he was hungry, because he couldn't get a job, because he was mentally ill? Where were they to hand out money and food and shelter? John, other than the Guardians, shout out to Curtis Lewa for that. Where is BLM in the subways going out and handing? Have you seen or heard about BLM in the subways handing out meals, asking people about their mental awareness? And again, there are so many measures that should have been taken and been in place to help Jordan Neely, and not just the system. Jordan Neely's family, because Jordan Neely's family's present now. His father, you know what? I don't know if his father realizes being bamboozled and used, but where was the family before the care? And that's why I say it's really tough to be. It's tough to be homeless, just homeless because of poverty, because most of us have friends and family to rely on to at least help. But, when it comes to substance abuse and mental illness, there's no help there. BLM only cares when you die, just as the NYPD upper echelon. They only care when it's too late. She didn't step in when the time is right. And yet, they enjoy the fruits of America, and yet they call out and they goddamn and damn America. It's shameful. It's shameful what comes out. It's complete rhetoric, and it's so divisive. And yet they talk about racism. And who's racist here? It's Newsom. It's Hawke and her sister. They're completely divisive, completely racist. And they're racist not just against whites. They're racist also against other blacks because their color is green. And that's what it ultimately comes down to. And that's why they have opposition with Eric Adams, because Eric Adams is getting the green that they want.
BLM, VSS Ventura's black laundering managers. That's it. I mean, you can call them whatever you want. I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm saying this doesn't look, doesn't sound organic. It doesn't feel organic. None of it, even the rhetoric that she was just speaking about, because what you said is accurate. Where are they to actually help black people? Nowhere. She's blaming the white people. It was probably the white people actually that was the reason why the jury was deadlocked, because they were saying they were probably, and that's the thing I don't think that they understand is their spin on the world, how they try to portray this world. It's literally BLM and elitist white minds who think that this is what's actually happening in the world. Nobody else thinks this. Not poor black people, not poor white people, not middle-class white people, not middle-class black people. Nobody believes this narrative is actually happening except for over-indoctrinated white people and people trying to play the race hustle. I mean, because it's clear as day. Like, the numbers are there. And then, look, you look in the crowds, and then at night they go out and march. It was a cold night last night. I mean, look in the crowd. Tell me how many black people here. Tell me how many people. I guarantee the whites outnumber. Guarantee. So I don't know who's really that's being the oppressor. I don't know what they're talking about here. It was clear as day that Jordan Neely was suffering and did not get the help that he deserved. And they endangered New Yorkers' lives. So here's from the protest last night. Let's see what they got to say.
What's his name? Jordan Neely. Say his name. Jordan Neely. What's his name? Jordan Neely. Say his name.
All right, so a rather small group, and for about every 9 white people, maybe a little bit higher, there's about 40, 50 people there. For every 8 to 10 white people, there's 1 black person there. That's Black Lives Matter.
I actually love that you put up this video about this protest. And I'll tell you why. This video actually tells a big story. It tells a big story of what the mission of BLM is actually about. It's not about Jordan Neely. They don't care about Jordan Neely. Because I tell you right now, everyone that's walking in this protest right now, if they saw Jordan Neely or someone that looks like Jordan Neely standing outside begging for money, everyone would walk right past and they wouldn't even give 25 cents. So they don't care about Jordan Neely. This is about exactly what they're saying in their statement, John. What are they saying? They're saying, F this racist-ass police. That's what it's about. It's about oppression, fight the system, taking down law enforcement. They sought the opportunity, and that's why they're making the parallel, and this is what I've been saying, of Daniel Penny to Eric Garner, trying to make the parallel to law enforcement, because this is what it's about. That's what this is ultimately about. They could care less about Jordan Neely. They'll forget his name pretty quick. It's about oppression, anti-police. It's another opportunity to get out there and take down the system and defund the police and remove. You'll see as this progression continues, you'll hear less and less about Jordan Neely and more about anti-police. And I'll put my money on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Rich Kentaff brings up a good point, and thank you for pointing it out. Is the female continued, the co-founder of By Large Mansions, said that it's in the Bible that thou shall not kill. It's actually not. It's actually murder. Murder, right? Kill an innocent person. That is murder. Killing in defense of your life or someone else's life is actually not in the 10 Commandments in the Bible. Because clearly in the Bible, over and over again, both in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, unfortunately, there's war, and God does have an army, and they don't go there and just bless everybody. So it's definitely a misrepresentation of the Bible. I think we spoke about that on the movie review. We went into the difference of that. But yeah, you see clear as day. It's such a racist country. So okay, so why does Black Lives Matter have so many white people and so few black people? I mean, that's what I'm more concerned with here. I'm saying, wow, this is a organization that supports black people. Where are all the black people? Right? Where are they? For every, there was only about 50 people here, and for every 9 to 8 to 10 people, there was one black person. The rest were white. So I'm gonna say that the gig's up, people. The gig is up. Let's see what this was another clip from last night during the protest.
Went to this trial. I watched the white people. I watched the non-black POCs. Mm-hmm. All say they were scared of Jordan. Mm-hmm. But the black man testified that he was not. So we got a problem. So all the white people here, y'all got work to do. Yeah. Stay the fuck out of black people business. Go in your neighborhood and do the anti-blackness work in there. I don't need your opinion. I don't need no Marxist bullshit. Okay. I can read black Marxism on my own. Okay. Y'all been reading 275 years in English before we was. Right. Go in your own communities and correct this bullshit. And stay out of our fucking business. Thank you. Because the white people on that jury didn't give a fuck about what they heard on the stand. Jordan Neely approached no one. Daniel Penny dropped him where he stood. They made those witnesses draw on a diagram where he got dropped. It was right after he entered that train car. I sat right there and listened to it. So white people, y'all got work to do. Yes. You better deal with your mothers, your fathers, your brothers, your sisters, your college professors, your bank lenders, your car loaners, all that. Stay the
What's his name?
That sounds like some Marxist stuff to me. I don't know if she knows, but somebody should tell her. Some of those white people should have told her.
I don't know if she knows this, but the man that's paying for all this, that gives them the money to be out there, his name is George Soros. He's a white Jewish male. They'll take that money. They'll take it from the white man. They want white people to stay in their business, but not when the money is green. So, BLM, listen, they're full of shit. We all know it. Everyone knows it. Who's buying this at this point? Who's buying this? Listen, this isn't 2020 anymore. I think people have woken up and they're not buying the crap from BLM. So buy laundering money machine, whatever you want to call them. But It's not about Black Lives Matter. It's about money matters. That's what it comes to when it comes to BLM. And you know what? You got to laugh, John. The white people stand there like cheering them on, like, oh, yeah, you're right. All this white guilt. Yeah. We'll stay in the neighborhoods. Well, yeah, we won't mix together. This is so inflammatory. They're trying to create so much violence. This is the paradox. Show compassion for people. And yet we just hear rhetoric that could cause extreme amount of violence. Will someone hold them accountable? This is a domestic terrorist organization. Absolutely. No doubt about it. But you know what? We're sitting here watching people that are completely full of shit. They have no problem taking money from a white man. That part, they'll let them stay in the business, right? But again, money talks. Bullshit walks.
Yeah, before we get off Daniel Penny, Judge Janine Pirro, Fox News. Just let's one more clip, and then we'll get off this. We'll go on to the capture of the UnitedHealthcare CEO's murderer.
In fact, Danny Penny was justified in using that force, and he used less than Jordan Neely did because he threatened imminent, deadly physical force. And you were entitled to use that kind of force. Although Danny Penny didn't even know he died. He's speaking to the cops. He didn't even know he died. He thought that apparently that he was unconscious. In the end, what we have here are people demanding justice for Jordan Neely. Let me make one point. The truth is that Jordan Neely was on a list of New York City's most needy, homeless, and mentally ill people in a city of 8 million. He's on a list of 50. He had open warrants for assaulting women on the subway. One senior woman in particular, he had just broken her orbital bone. He had 42 arrests in 7 years. Where were these people trying to help Jordan Neely? But Danny Penny did what all of us would want someone to do if we were on that subway car. And I think that America breathes a sigh of relief today. America now recognizes that we can protect other Americans and not be accused of being vigilantes, that we can be good Samaritans within the confines of the law. And if a jury in New York City can find Danny Penny not guilty, well, then I feel good about the rest of America.
Judge, quick follow-up question. Would it pass constitutional muster, and do you think it's likely for the DA to recharge Daniel Penny?
First of all, it's double jeopardy. Secondly, they shouldn't have gotten involved in the politics of saying, we're going to dismiss the first count of Man 2 in this indictment. Stay out of it. They said that they couldn't come to an agreement. Why all the fancy footwork between the Manhattan DA and the judge? That's not going to happen, because if they can't prove criminally negligent homicide, for sure they're not going to be able to come back with Man 2, and it is double jeopardy.
Interesting take.
Well, I think it's, absolutely. The bottom line is I think that we're all saying the same thing. Daniel Penny did not intend to kill him. He meant to control him. And what's a reflection of the future? It's looking at the past. Look at the past. He's got 42 arrests. Some of those arrests, he's attacked elderly people. He broke the orbital bone of an elderly female. So what does that do? That solidifies the perceived threat. That was the subjective observation by Daniel Penny. His assessment was accurate. He perceived him as a legitimate threat, and he took action to control him. And again, we have to reiterate, we said it before, Daniel Penny did not act alone in trying to control Jordan Neely before he met his tragic demise. He was assisted by 2 other passengers. So 2 other passengers and also other witnesses on the train saw the need for Jordan Neely to be placed under control by Good Samaritans. And if they did not take action, the question would be, what else would happen? That's why my question always is to these anti-police advocates, these anti-police system, the BLM, these democratic socialists. What is the solution? If you were on that train that day, how do you show compassion? When do you take action? And again, I say it figuratively speaking. Do you wait till the knife is in someone else's throat? When is the time to take action? And Daniel Penny, in my opinion, took action at the appropriate time. Based on his training, based on his life experience, he perceived the threat, and he was right, because Jordan Neely's history is a reflection just of that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of racists on this channel today, boy. Woo! The anti-racist exhibiting their racism, huh? Yeah, I love getting called a racist just based on the color of my skin. It's completely laughable. All right, so let's switch topics. Daniel Penny was acquitted, as he should have been. He should have never even been tried. I think we could all, well, I think any reasonable person could conclude that he acted in self-defense. If you understand the law, if you read the law, Article 35 in New York State penal law, in New York State Penal Code, you would clearly see that he has the right to self-defense, because there were black women on the train that day that said, I've ridden the train my entire life. I've dealt with mentally ill and homeless people my entire life, but I was afraid for my life. This was different. They testified to that. It wasn't just white people. It wasn't just white men, like what the accusation was being made. No. If anybody was paying attention to the trial, there were people of all skin colors, New Yorkers, people of all faiths. There was actually men of different skin tones helping Daniel Penny to keep Jordan Neely down. So, I think the whole thing was laughable. It just proves how inept Alvin Bragg is by presenting this case, that he wasn't able to get a conviction, because it should have never happened anyway. So I'm glad common sense reigned in New York. So also yesterday, UnitedHealthcare CEO murderer was arrested in Altoona, PA. Altoona, Pennsylvania. A lot of facts came out about this individual. And I'm going to say, I think that I was shocked how it happened. But I still do credit the investigative work of the New York City Police Department, as well as their coordination effort to get out the necessary photos and evidence so that America could see who this man is. And ultimately, that's how he was found. He was found sitting, eating inside of a McDonald's. They were alerted by a civilian, a keen-eyed civilian. Prior to this, I did say yesterday that I believed that the NYPD had his name. And I'll bring you a press conference where the NYPD says no. They did not have his name prior to this. They didn't have his name until this occurred. Keen-eyed civilian called 911. Altoona police showed up, and they arrested him and recovered a firearm.
John, we're getting a lot of hate today, and that's all right. We welcome friends, listeners, trolls, haters. Everybody's welcome in the space. Opposition meets opportunity. We're big boys. We can handle it. But what I'm seeing in some of the hate is they're saying, oh, but you guys said this, you said that. Well, that's the whole premise to this podcast, right? Our opinion based on anecdotal experience. And based on our experiences, the NYPD is great at getting the pedigree, getting the information on potential perpetrators, persons of interest, and subjects in pretty quick in real time. This case has been quite complex, perplexed, had a lot of complexities to it. It wasn't that simple. It was day 6 when he actually met his capture. And again, that was our opinion based on our observations, subjective opinion, and we're entitled to our opinion, and so are you. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. We would say we both believe that the NYPD did have the information. They're saying that they did not. That also may be a lie and may be a ruse, because it's my opinion that there are other people involved in this case as well. Because the question now is, how did he obtain and also have the knowledge of the whereabouts and the itinerary to, unfortunately, the loss of life when it comes to CEO Brian Thompson? So these are questions that are being asked. We have a young man here, 26 years old. He's actually from Maryland, did have a fake driver's license, several fake documents on him, and he's found in Altoona, Pennsylvania. So ultimately, what this also comes down to is we should continue to have support for our law enforcement throughout the entire nation, especially the NYPD, which is iconic and symbolic at the forefront of policing, and especially just very intelligent investigations, the coordination through law enforcement agencies throughout this entire country, and of course, citizens making that identification and actually caring about this case really show the humanity and still that America can come together. So quite impressive. Shout out to Michael Alcazar, great friend to the podcast, good friend to John and myself. He says this is what the squad does. Come up with theories. I appreciate you guys. Hold on. These comments are flying in by these trolls. Delivering info as it breaks. Good job, Jets. Thank you so much. Same here, Michael. Always a pleasure to have you. Again, it's our opinion, and that's what we do. We talked about this yesterday, right? We're going to have different angles and different theories of speculation, and the squads are going to follow each angle where it leads and where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, so Rocco Mangione, 26 years old, same age as Daniel Penny. Yeah, he was found in possession of the firearm. I believe that he did not speak with authorities. You see here, if you look at this photo that comes in from Fox News, it appears that he soiled himself. It appears he may have pissed his pants. If you look closely at his crotch area and his waist area. So he was found in McDonald's, like I said, by a worker. Worker called Altoona police. Altoona police arrived and arrested Rocco Mangione. NYPD detectives were alerted. Chief of detectives spoke with the authorities over on Altoona. And investigative detectives for the squad at that point started to head over, along with members of Manhattan DA's office, started to shoot out to Altoona, Pennsylvania to debrief Rocco Mangione. For those of you that are civilians on here, what debrief is when a suspect is arrested and the police read you your rights. It's the time when everyone knows I'll plead the fifth. You have the right to remain silent. They're there to find out and get more info about the crime, what happened. So they drove out there. Rumor is that Kaz Daughtry flew a helicopter out there. We're not sure how true or not true that is, but we do know that he was there and he did show up there. Deputy Commissioner Operations Kaz Daughtry. So let's bring to you the first press conference, and that presser is from the NYPD and New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Upon learning about this, it again, it's more like in the terms of, to use Marlon Bethel's terms, it's just more perception management, in my opinion. So let's before I put the video on, you got anything?
Shout out to Marlon Bethel who's here, by the way. I love that comment. Yeah, absolutely. I think it absolutely is perception management. No surprise that Kaz Daughtry, never let an immediate opportunity take you away from something. So of course he was there. Absolutely spot on. So let's just dive right into it.
Yeah, so Kaz Daughtry to me is like, when a gambler hears the slot machines ringing, they can't avoid it. They have to get up to the slot machine. It's the same thing for Kaz with the cameras. Once he hears press cameras, Kaz Daughtry is not going to be far behind. All right, here we go. I got it up now. Here we go. This is the presser that happened immediately upon this individual being apprehended.
New York City murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson. They say he's identified as 26-year-old Luigi Mangione. Here's New York City Mayor Eric Adams with an update.
Of UnitedHealthcare was the victim of a senseless act of violence. Our officers have been working around the clock. Many of them did not go home to pursue this individual. It was crucial that we were able to remove him off the streets of America, and we were going to seek him out no matter where he was at the time. And so this is a strong person of interest. The police commissioner and chief of detectives will go over where we are right now in the investigation. He matches the description of the identification we've been looking for. He's also in possession of several items that we believe will connect him to this incident. How did we do it? Good old-fashioned police work. The chief of detectives and the police commissioner made the decision to release as much of a photo that we had at the time. We sent it across the country, and someone, a McDonald's employee, did something we ask every American to do. If you see something, say something, but most importantly, do something. And they did. And because of that, we believe we have a strong person of interest to deal with this case. I want to now turn it over to the police commissioner of the city of New York, Commissioner Tisch.
Before you go, Eric, I'm being corrected here, and I'm being told that Kaz Daughtry did not take a helicopter. In fact, the weather was too bad, but he did fly the NYPD plane over there. He was caravanned over to an airport and flew out into Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think Richard Kentef nails it right here. This is absolutely true, and I know the knowledge when someone's actually wanted outside the state. He says, why would Kaz and why would he have that many detectives there with him? Whenever our PDs would send detectives, the most I would ever go was 2, no matter how high profile. You're absolutely right? The cases that I know of, usually it's 1, sometimes 1 squad detective will link up with other agencies, and in many cases 2. But of course, with this administration, it's a waste of taxpayer money because we're not going to miss a media frenzy opportunity. So it's a waste of taxpayer money. It's complete mismanagement. There's no reason for Kaz Daughtry to be there. You're the ones who's in charge. You should be sheltering, and you should be delegating where things move. It doesn't make sense for you to actually leave New York City. What if something breaks out in New York City and you're that vital to the operations? Complete mismanagement, failure on leadership. Absolutely. Kaz Daughtry, I believe, and I don't know what goes in Kaz's mind, but I believe in his head, he thinks that that's what a leader is supposed to do. What you should do is send your 2 brightest and best detectives that would be the best representation of the New York City Police Department. You should stay in New York City in case maybe there's a protest or riot that breaks out because BLM is putting out rhetoric and being completely inflammatory about the Daniel Penny case. That would make sense, and that would be good leadership.
Yeah, so like I said, that's exactly what it is. You're flying, you're rushing out to get out there to jump in front of the camera. You hear the clicks, you want to feel the camera lights, and you want to speak. I didn't hear Adam. Someone saying that Adam said they had his name. I didn't hear that part, but the chief of detectives is who I would actually go for any somewhat reliable information, because Eric Adams has never told the truth at one of these press conferences ever. So I don't know what he's saying. Again, I'm going to commend the work of NYPD detectives. They got to the point where they had to do all of these video canvases. I think the video canvases are coupled with the investigation, and that included the video canvases and obtaining the videos, and then actually being able to disseminate the information and not trying to be glory hogs and sharing that with the public, putting out the necessary information for that citizen to see someone sitting there and say, I think that person sitting across from me in McDonald's is what ultimately cracked this case. Now, I'm not knocking the New York City Police Department for not getting him. It's tough to get somebody outside of the city. Like I said, he's more than likely going to be in a rural area, part of the country, away from cameras, away from things of that, or he's going to be looking to flee the country. He had a passport with foreign money. I mean, so, you're doing one of the other. So I think that coordination should be commended. I don't blame anyone for doing that, because these detectives do deserve that credit. I just think it's always not genuine with New York City Mayor Eric Adams. It's always, look at me, pat on the back, team I assembled, the work we do, when really, I mean, I don't know. So let's go up next. He brings a commissioner into the fray. Here's Commissioner Tisch. Let's hear what she's got to say.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Earlier this morning in Altoona, Pennsylvania, members of the Altoona Police Department arrested Luigi Mangione, a 26-year-old male on firearms charges. At this time, he is believed to be our person of interest in the brazen targeted murder of Brian Thompson, CEO of UnitedHealthcare, last Wednesday in Midtown Manhattan. The suspect was in a McDonald's and was recognized by an employee who then called local police. Responding officers questioned the suspect, who was acting suspiciously and was carrying multiple fraudulent IDs as well as a U.S. passport. Upon further investigation, officers recovered a firearm on his person, as well as a suppressor, both consistent with the weapon used in the murder. They also recovered clothing, including a mask consistent with those worn by our wanted individual. Also recovered was a fraudulent New Jersey ID, matching the ID our suspect used to check into his New York City hostel before the shooting incident. Additionally, officers recovered a handwritten document that speaks to both his motivation and mindset. NYPD detectives are en route to Pennsylvania as we seek to interview the subject further. This apprehension is thanks to the tireless work of the greatest detectives in the world, and of course, the strong relationships we have with our local law enforcement partners. On every level, local, state, and federal, we all serve the same public safety mission. And this case, which captured the attention of an entire nation, is another example of how connected we are and how important it is to work together, share information, and pursue every lead. For just over 5 days, our NYPD investigators combed through thousands of hours of video, followed up on hundreds of tips, and processed every bit of forensic evidence, DNA, fingerprints, IP addresses, and so much more to tighten the net. We deployed drones, canine units, and scuba divers. We leveraged the domain awareness system, Argus cameras, and conducted aviation canvasses. And our detectives also went door to door, interviewing potential witnesses and doing the good old-fashioned police work that our investigators are famous for. This combination of old school detective work and new age technology is what led to this result today. And we must also acknowledge the instrumental role the media and the public played in this case. The images that we shared with the public were spread far and wide, and the tips we received led to the recovery of crucial evidence. We should never underestimate the power of the public to be our eyes and our ears in these investigations. This is the third time in 3 weeks that a member of the public has seen something and said something and done something that led to a high-profile arrest. The triple stabbing homicide in Manhattan, the gunpoint robberies in Queens during which an NYPD officer was shot, and now this. Now, the case will continue through the criminal justice process. And while we are proud of today's accomplishment, we must, of course, remember that a family is in mourning. I want to again extend my sympathies to Brian's family, his co-workers, and all who knew him. Finally, I want to thank the women and men of the NYPD, especially our Detective Bureau personnel, with a strong assist from our intelligence analysts. We also thank the SAC of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division, Leslie Rodriguez-Bekshies. And I want to commend the staff of the Manhattan DA's office, and especially DA Alvin Bragg. He has been working with us 24/7 on this case, and I am incredibly grateful for his partnership. I'll now pass it along to our great Chief of Detectives, Joe Kenny, who will provide additional information.
Before we go to Joe Kenny, Eric, what do you think about the new sheriff, Jessica Tisch?
Listen, I think she did a good job of presenting it. And it's kind of funny. She keeps saying women and men, but that's okay. We'll go with that. I think she did a good job of presenting the basic information to it, fundamental information. Obviously, she didn't deep dive into the technicality of it. That should be meant for Chief Joe Kenny, which is obviously why she's going to refer to him. I think she's doing a good job of laying out pretty much the preliminary investigation that was taking place and how he was actually apprehended. I have no problems with it. I think the speech is fine. So I think ultimately what this comes down to, I think that we should be giving credit to the NYPD and absolutely an extensive amount of credit to the rank and file, and especially the men and women that do these investigations. Because I think ultimately it's not about who makes the apprehension. It's about the investigation and the hours that these men and women of the NYPD work tirelessly. And it's a great coordinated effort with the FBI and also ATF to make this apprehension. It was their investigation that put the tools and put the resources out there. And what did Eric Adams say? Maybe it was a slip of the tongue. Maybe he didn't realize it. Usually they like to acknowledge technology. But what ultimately did this case come down to? He said it himself, good old-fashioned police work. So yes, it was the brave men and women, the excellent work of the detectives who used and utilized, supplemented the resource, the technology that they have to do the investigation. So it goes back to what we've been saying on many podcasts that you and I have done, different episodes, that drones and all the technology is supplemental and you cannot replace the human element. So shout out to the fine detectives, men and women of the NYPD. They do an outstanding job, and their investigative work led to the apprehension. They made the determination to put out the pictures. Obviously, at that point, it was intelligent move. They made the determination when. So at this point, I'm hoping that Chief Kenny starts to reveal some of the motive, if any, that they have. So at this point, we need to know what's the motive. How did the perpetrator know the whereabouts in the itinerary? Is there a relationship with the CEO and this young man? What knowledge do we have of this young man? What proficiency about firearms? We know that the information that we're getting is that this firearm was a 3D printed firearm. So there's a lot of information that still hasn't been disclosed. And of course, are there any other accomplices sought out in this investigation, which I believe there has to be?
Yeah, so I thought Tish did an okay job. I don't think it was, again, I gotta always take pause when I hear the drones being brought up. The drones did not find the bag. The human element did. So I'm not sure why we're crediting the drones, why it's getting brought up at all. And then the other part that really, I'm like, what did she just say? She said, we have to thank Alvin Bragg. None of this would be possible without him. We have to thank the coordinator. What are we thanking Alvin Bragg for? I'm sorry. What timeout? What's happening here? What has Alvin Bragg done? He gave the okay that the photo should be released? I mean, if he didn't, that's a big problem. If there was an issue with him saying, oh, that photo shouldn't be released, that's a problem. New York City was dealing with a numerous amount of problems, particularly yesterday, around an acquittal from a case that should have never even been brought forth by Alvin Bragg. I don't know what we're thanking Alvin Bragg for. Again, we're seeing how politically motivated and how politically driven this department is. So I take a big issue with that. And so presenting the facts, listen, you could put Kaz Daughtry up there with a well-prepared speech, and, he'll present the facts as well. Look at Eric Adams. He did it too. If he could do it, you could do it. We could do it. Anybody could do it.
Well, that's the whole point, right? So she doesn't have any knowledge about the technicalities of the police department. So it's very scripted. And Stacey did a fine job just putting the base information. I'm glad you actually highlighted that. I didn't want to segue to something else, but since you brought it out, when it comes to Alvin Bragg, I think that, we talk about him being a complete idiot when it comes to Daniel Penny case, but I think that he knew exactly what he's doing. He knows that if Daniel Penny is found guilty, it looks great for him, pandering to his constituents, to his policies, his politics. And if he doesn't get convicted, he puts a rise into BLM and all these anti-police advocates. He knows that. He's very knowledgeable when it comes to that. But again, it's so interesting, the police department, and this is the part I do have, the problem I have with Jessica Tisch, is this pandering with politics. And we see it in the infancy of her tenure now as police commissioner. She already butted up to Al Sharpton. Now you're thanking Alvin Bragg. You're thanking all these people that are in complete opposition, polarizing to your own police department. So again, it's very scripted. I don't know how much she's going to take hold of the police department when it comes to operations. But if this is just what she's going to do, anybody could be a card reader. The only difference is she makes a better presence and appearance than Ed Caban or Tom Donlan. She has she has good poise and distinction when she presents this information, but it's scripted.
Yeah, 100%. Logic's Finest says, can we all agree how hysterically funny the speculation around this guy was? Pro, not a pro. He's a Lebanese, a foreigner, distraction with monopoly money. He's a Martian. Listen, it's going to be a tale that's going to play out for years. I'm telling you right now, none of that stuff's going away, by the way. There was numerous conspiracy theories around what happened. Now there's going to be numerous conspiracy theories around Luigi Mananone, however you say his name, and you're going to hear it play out. I mean, it is a prolific case. There's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions I think all of us have that aren't answered at this point. So I think we're going to get there. I think what we did yesterday is that's what people do, right? A hot topic comes up. Fortunately, some man lost his life, and there was a massive national, probably international manhunt going on. Where is this person? And he was apprehended yesterday, So, I thought it was funny. But I think, Lebanese, Italian, Syrian, whatever, Turkish, it could have been any one of those things, And it turned out, he looked almost identical to that photo, somewhat young, in shape, somewhat feminine features. And there was monopoly money in that bag. What was that about? What's his mind state? We'll look into a little bit of the victimology and all that stuff and what's being placed out online about this individual now. AM Pulse says this feels like a bad Hollywood movie script. And it's kind of what it does, it kind of does. So I don't blame anybody for speculating. And when I say conspiracy theories, I really mean hypotheses, what people are thinking, like what could be, and like I said, I don't think any of that stuff I think you're only going to see more and more and more as the days unfold and as the more and more information leads to more questions, leads to more, I think we're just going to continue to see this build. Let's hear what Chief Kenny, NYPD Chief of Detectives, had to say. I'm glad to see, though, that Tish did not lead him by the arm to the podium this time.
Well, before you read that, I just want to say Logic's Finest. I think they nailed it right here. Jessica rubber stamp Tish, just another yes man for Eric's Ebonics Adams. Yeah, I think she is another yes man in some ways. She has a little more power because of her family's wealth. Obviously, a little more footing when it comes to the police department, but she is pandering to Eric Adams. She's pandering to Alvin Bragg. She's pandering to Al Sharpton. And the question is why. I think eventually she sees herself making a run for herself in some form of politics, maybe mayor someday, but it's disgusting what I see. Again, here's another police commissioner just throwing politics right into the police department. So shout out to you, Logic's Finest.
Chief.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon. As the Commissioner stated earlier, a male was taken into custody today in Altoona, Pennsylvania this morning. He has been identified as Luigi Nicholas Mangione. He's a male, 26 years old. He was born and raised in Maryland. We know he has ties to San Francisco, California, and his last known address was Honolulu, Hawaii. He has no prior arrest history in New York. Members of the NYPD Detective Bureau are currently traveling to Pennsylvania with members of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office to interview this subject. This case was brought to a successful conclusion based on the coordinated effort between numerous NYPD units, including the Intelligence and Counterterrorism Bureau, our federal partners at the FBI, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and of course, members of the Altoona Police Department in Pennsylvania. On Thursday, one day after this crime was committed, the NYPD released a photo of the shooter in this case. This picture was obtained by the NYPD during one of their extensive video canvasses. We took that photograph and we asked for the public's help in identifying this subject, and the public responded. Hundreds of tips began to pour into our hotline. Each tip was investigated thoroughly, and we began to release additional photographs as they came into our possession. The NYPD provided these photos to numerous media outlets. Local, national, and international outlets released the photo via television, print, social media, and online content. Luckily, a citizen in Pennsylvania recognized our subject and called local law enforcement. Members of the Altoona Police Department responded to the call, and based on their investigation, they notified the NYPD. This investigation is still active and ongoing. Thank you very much.
We're going to take questions on shooting first, and then we'll. Mark?
I had a couple questions about.
All right, we don't need the questions. What do you think about what Chief Kenny had to say?
Well, listen, he's the one that's technical in this case, provided the information. He didn't mention he mentioned the district attorney's office and the detectives went down. He didn't mention Kaz Daughtry went down there himself also. If anybody should have went, it should have been either Kenny himself or Chief Savino. Why is Kaz Daughtry going there? Again, so I'd like to know, I'd like the police department to provide more answers at this point. I think that they do have some information. Obviously, there needs to be a thorough interrogation, if there is one, unless the person of interest pleads the fifth and lawyers up. But at this point, I'd like to know why he was in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Does he know anyone there? Is anyone helping him in that area? What led him to Altoona, Pennsylvania? He's from Maryland. Does he still have any family there? Does he have any friends there? He lived in Honolulu, Hawaii. So my question is, living in Honolulu, Hawaii, was this young man ever in the military? Right? In Honolulu, you have 4 military bases there. So what are his connections to Hawaii? And then, of course, he said he has connections to San Francisco. So there has to be other people involved to help him, for him to maneuver in this point here. Labro says, and the Proud Boys, this is all conjecture. I mean, this is all hate. But again, I'd like to know the other information with this case and if there's any outstanding accomplices. It's very possible also this apprehension was made sooner than the police department actually wanted. It appears to be that there's other factors that have not been closed in. And when it comes to this case, I'm pretty confident there has to be other accomplices and other information for this to come to a close. But again, Jessica Tish is thanking Alvin Bragg. What? Because, like you said, because we're releasing a photo? I don't know. So now we have to talk about, is there going to be extradition? Is he going to be held there, charged for the firearm? It's a lot of information we still haven't heard yet.
So he is being extradited to New York. New York will charge the murder. He was arraigned in Pennsylvania for the firearm and other charges, fraudulent documents, I believe, and there was some other charges there. I want to read this article before we look at all of the online speculation about Luigi Maganones. But there's an article about his family. His family's breaking the silence on Luigi and what happened. Full disclosure, I did peruse Luigi's Twitter. He has a large Instagram following and a large Twitter following. Some people pointed to some things, but I gotta say, all in all, looking at it, he appeared to be a highly smart individual, well-read, enjoyed books. He listened to some of the same podcasts that I do. He was listening to Andrew Huberman. He was listening to Jonathan Haidt, who ran Andrew Huberman is like a longevity doctor. Jonathan Haidt wrote The Coddling of the American Mind. It appeared he had some type of fascination with mushrooms. I don't know if he was taking those or not taking those. So at that point, but I perused it, and I got to say, just at first glance, maybe I did look 10, 20 tweets. There was nothing that really stood out to me. Other than there had been a break since about April. It seemed he was pretty active prior to this April, and then he just stopped. So it was weird, but like just perusing his tweets, I didn't really see anything. But before we even go into this article, Eric, so now that we know that this was a young man, 26 years old, well-educated, from a very wealthy family, was going to come into a big inheritance, no military or police training that we know of, would you consider this still a professional hit at this point, whether paid or not? Because we still don't know, right? I would assume it's not paid, but I mean, that's just an assumption I have.
So I'm sure the hate's going to come. People say, no, right? He's well-educated. He's self-educated. And what do we know today? I use it myself, right? Traveling by RV. And I'm pretty handy, but I fix a lot of stuff when it comes to RV that I'm not knowledgeable. And if I don't know how to do something, or I start opening something up and I get to a point where I've hit a wall, I go right to YouTube. And I call it YouTube University. You can learn anything. So you can be self-read. You can be self-educated. You can learn martial arts through YouTube. You can learn sports. You can be completely educated. I call it YouTube University. And we have a real intelligent male. So, yes, I do think this is professional. He got himself to the point, right? You can be self-educated. I mean, John, you and I talk about it all the time. There is very little, if anything, no training on leadership when it comes to the police department. You and I are both self-read when it comes to leadership. I took pride in reading numerous leadership books, and that's how I learned, got my leadership skills along with officer candidate school and training I got in the Marine Corps. But I read a lot of books about leadership and different theories on it, different philosophies of it. So you can actually get yourself self-educated. I do think this is a professional homicide in a sense. I'm not saying was he a hired gun? We don't know. That's all speculation. I don't know. But this was professional in the sense that it was planned, premeditated, targeted, the use of this firearm, the knowledge of an attachment to the firearm, how to use it, how to clear a jam, how to maneuver in New York City, how to get out of New York City. So yes, in that sense, this was professional. I mean, I think people have this idea of professional being a hired gun, dressing in that trench coat, wearing the big black sunglasses, and making no mistakes. And I think that's not the case. I think there's different forms of professionalism. I think this professionalism, when we say proficiency, the ammunition was scripted. It was the scripture on the ammunition, right, which told the story. Live rounds were left in the scene. I believe it was done intentional. The coffee cup, the being at the Starbucks, I believe was arrogant and also intentional. The backpack with the Monopoly money, I believe that was intentional. So yes, my answer to this, my subjective opinion, is that this was professional in that manner.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the fact that he wasn't apprehended by law enforcement, he was apprehended by a witness's ID. Is it sloppy? Did he leave a lot of evidence? Did he leave a lot of weird things? Yeah, he did. But I'm going to agree. I think the planning that went into it, and unfortunately, it was successful, right? He took a man's life, and he was on the run for 6 days. No one knew where he was. The NYPD, the lead investigators, didn't know his name 6 days in. They didn't know his whereabouts 6 days in. So I'm going to say, professional, not professional. It was a successful target. Marlon Bethel says, where did he learn to use the firearm? Great question, Marlon. Or get a 3D printed one. It's a great question. Where did he get the gun from? Where did he train with that gun? Where did he get the silencer from? Like I said, silencers can be bought. I know in Florida, you can get a silencer. You just have to get approval from the ATF. And I don't believe it's hard to get if you pass background checks, especially former member of law enforcement or in the military. I believe it's just a simple background check, just as simple as actually owning a firearm itself. So I don't own one myself, so I'm not too familiar with it. But that's a question. That's a great question, Marlon. Does he have a pistol license? Is a question. He's 26 years old. From what state? I believe his last known state that he lived in was Hawaii. Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions here that remain. And like I said, as we look into this case further and further in the days and weeks coming, we're only going to get more questions.
Well, again, like I said, I'm a firm believer. And Marlon asked a great question. Where did he learn that use that firearm? And you can learn anything on YouTube. There's so many different avenues when it comes to YouTube. Again, like I said, when I'm repairing things, a lot of times I go right to YouTube and it will give me a breakdown on something I've never done before and how to fix it. So literally from point A to point B on how to take parts apart. I fixed my water heater. I fixed a commode in the RV, which is different. I know how to do it in a house, no problem. But doing an RV, the parts are completely different. And I went right to YouTube and it walked me right through it. And I was able to manage to figure out what tools to get, how to remove it, and how to put it back together just from YouTube. So you can learn a lot of information. Again, I call it YouTube University. And this is a smart, well-educated kid. He has an educated family, so he has access to money. Money is a tool, right? Money should not be everything in life, but money is a tool. And it's a tool that can be used successfully for someone who has knowledge on how to navigate. And he obviously has a vast knowledge of this country. He's been to Hawaii, on the other side of the country, has ties to San Francisco, ties to the East Coast here in Maryland. Why did he pick Altoona? I'm very curious of why he stopped in Altoona. I'm trying to do some research about Altoona. Is there buses? Is there hubs? Does he have friends there? Again, so maybe he has family that was in the military, which is I'm curious why he was in Honolulu, or maybe he's a surfer. I don't know. Again, like I said, Honolulu itself is very military oriented. You have 4 different bases there, so these are definitely things that need to be explored. Again, just speculation. I know we'll get a lot of hate, but these are angles, these are theories, and that's what's interesting about it, right? We all have our angles to come up with. But again, he's intelligent, self-educated. Again, how do we learn how to do this podcast? You have to figure it out, right? We don't have a formal education on it. So Richard Tentaff, I think he asked it before, is how did he know? Here it is. Again, how do you know where to be at the right time? That's my question is, what is his knowledge? Is there a relationship with him to Brian Thompson? Does he know him? Does the family know him? What's the relationship? How did he know he was going to be there at that specific time? What was the access he had and knowledge to his itinerary? That I'm really curious. And that's going to unfold a lot of information when it comes to this case.
Crazy 10-7 puts it here. This comes out if any of you guys own stocks. If you own stock in UnitedHealthcare, you'll get the message. If you just follow the channel for the stock, you go on Stock Twits. There's numerous social media things. And it's right here. Crazy 10-7 put out. UnitedHealthcare Group, New York Stock Exchange, UNH, will host its annual investor conference for analysts and institutional investors in New York City on Wednesday, December 4th, 2024, beginning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. So I agree that is public information. That is easy to get. I think the real questions is, did he know the CEO was going to host at that event? I'm sure there was probably some other stuff. If you went on the website, the company's website, you could have found that out. But why the hate for that particular CEO? Again, I think a lot of us were speculating, and it's a proper speculation. Was somebody denied health care? Was it, what happened? Why was UnitedHealthcare specifically targeted? Why was Brian Thompson specifically targeted? Why did he lay in wait for Brian Thompson specifically? Oh, those questions, I honestly don't know that we're ever going to get the answer to. We might, in 10 years, there might be some more documentaries that come out on Netflix and that are still speculating. And then 10 years after that, when the motive is found, somebody else is going to come up with a completely different theory. I think there's a ton of questions on how and why that remain. Yes, that conference was public information, but again, did he know that Brian Thompson was going to be alone? Did he know that he wasn't going to have security? And if so, how? And I don't know that we're ever going to get the answers to those questions.
I want to say again, going back to the question about being professional, some people say, oh, but he was sloppy. I think he was so sloppy. It was almost like it was over the top. He was too sloppy, right? Leaving the backpack behind, leaving live ammunition at the scene along with the shell casings, having the cup of coffee, bottle of water, exposing the mask, a specific backpack, a specific jacket. I think it was so sloppy that it was done on purpose. And that's part of the deflection and distraction, I believe. Other than that, it doesn't make sense to me. It was just too sloppy. Even someone that doesn't have any knowledge of firearms or doesn't plan out a crime, you would think that they would try to do a better job of concealing their own identity and concealing their whereabouts. So to me, it's so sloppy that it appears to be done intentional.
Yeah, so Reason 1024 says, why not focus on the crimes that the CEOs are able to commit with zero accountability? So, I've been going through my own fight with New York City around, elected officials and their appointed managers and the crimes they've committed and the lack of accountability that New York State and New York City and the federal government has given basically to the thousands that New York City has harmed. There are recourses in this country on how to address things that do not consider violence. Luigi Manganone had access to money. He had access to lawyers. He had a large following on social media. He could have been allowed voice. There's ways to do things. I will never resort to violence, and I won't condone violence. And again, what did Luigi Maganone's act, what did it solve? You killed a 50-year-old CEO. You took him away from his children. What policy is going to change? What stops anything that you're mad about? Nothing. You just killed someone. But it doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, the argument's horrible. The argument's horrible, and we're seeing it time and time again in the mainstream media. We're even seeing mainstream talking heads parroting this person's point. It's sick to me, people. I don't know where we're headed as a country if we don't have the work ethic, the compassion, and the integrity to push forth to have change using our own names and using the system that's put in place to address our concerns and our grievances. We have courts. We have courts of law. We have civil courts. There are many ways to skin a cat. This isn't one of them. This is horrific. This changed nothing. This changed absolutely nothing.
No, it didn't change anything. It actually made it worse, right? Again, just as Daniel Penny and Jordan Neely, 2 lives are altered and changed forever. The death of Brian Thompson doesn't change anything. UnitedHealthcare, despite his tragic demise, continued working that day, and they continued working on. They're going on without Brian Thompson. And this young man, his life will never be forever the same because he's now going to spend the rest of his life, if convicted, in prison. So 2 lives are altered and didn't change anything. So if his issues are with the actual insurance company itself and their policies, and I've had issues with insurance companies also. It's a nightmare. Automobile insurance, medical insurance, prescriptions, it's a nightmare, especially prescriptions. They're so expensive. You know, some medications are $40,000, $50,000 for a 30-month period, 30-day period. So I know, very familiar with that. And I can tell you this, it doesn't change anything. This just makes it worse. You're right. We have all these systems in place. We have small claims courts. We have lawyers. We have attorneys. We have social media to actually, garner help. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. But an act of violence doesn't help anything. It just makes it worse. Yes, sometimes there is a time for violence. This is not one of them. The time for violence was Daniel Penny to actually control a person that was an imminent threat to other bystanders. What threat was Brian Thompson to anybody if they're not, if things are not going well with insurance? But what threat was he? How does this change anything? And again, UnitedHealthcare continues business just as usual. So you didn't change anything. All you did was alter 2 lives.
Yeah, so let's hear from Luigi Maganone's family first. So let's see what they got to say. The family of Luigi, the Ivy League graduate charged with murder of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, said they were devastated by his arrest. And it was revealed the 26-year-old alleged gunman spiraled after undergoing traumatic back surgery. Our family is shocked and devastated by Luigi's arrest, the family said in a statement shared by his cousin Nino Maganone, a Republican Baltimore County delegate, late Monday. We offer our prayers to the family of Brian Thompson, and we ask people to pray for all involved. We are devastated by this news, the Maganone family said. Here is a photo of Luigi Maganone in the cell. Let me take that back. Here is a photo of him, I believe, in the clothing he was wearing. I don't want to say he was in the cell at that time because clearly a person dressed like that should never be put inside of a holding cell or any type of cell or left on their own, because the jacket, the scarf could all be used for him to commit suicide. We did show you the photo earlier where it appears he peed in his pants. I don't know the reason for that. If it was intentional, if it was because he was scared, if it was because they wouldn't let him use the bathroom. I don't know what the reason is, but it appears that he soiled himself in a different photo. So I think that here they're just taking a photo of how he looked at the time of the arrest, what he was wearing. Well, I hope so anyway. But if you could see here, here's a picture of Luigi and his sister. He's clearly muscular. He's in shape. Hard to tell from this picture if he's still in shape. It's the winter time. He's covered in clothes. But he looks healthy here. He looks more withdrawn here in his facial features. So that's a picture of him and his sister on the beach. The relatives added they cannot comment on news reports regarding the accused killer, who was arrested at Pennsylvania McDonald Monday morning following a frantic 5-day manhunt. We only know what we've read in the media, the family said. Luigi was reported to the police by Altoona McDonald's employee who recognized the suspected gunman from photos released by the New York Police Department. Local cops approached him while he was eating at the restaurant, and he started to shake when they asked if he'd been to New York recently, according to the criminal complaint. He provided them with a fake ID, believed to be the same one he used by checking in a Manhattan hostel before killing, and was taken into custody. Police discovered a ghost gun with a silencer on him and other items that sources were consistent with what the police were seeking, including a rambling, handwritten manifesto that claimed these parasites had it coming. I do apologize for any strife or trauma, but it had to be done, he wrote. Before you go, I just want to give a shout out to the cops that were there in Pennsylvania, because I could just picture how many ways that 911 call could go bad and this individual not be apprehended based upon the witness ID or the witness believing it. So one, it could fail at the call of the 911 operator. It could fail when it gets down to the patrol unit not taking this serious, taking their time to get over there. And then it could fail again when they actually get there to investigate this. So I just want to say like a big shout out to the Altoona Police Department for actually properly investigating this case in a professional manner in that 911 call and not just dismissing it on the face of its call. I think cops are pessimists. We just are. You see a lot of stuff. You get a lot of calls. God knows how many calls around the nation have been put in about someone thinking they seen this person. But I think it was a great job on Altoona's part, and I just got to give them a shout out again.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely want to piggyback on that. Just as John said, I mean, I think it's great. It's a much small department, right? That's a small city. I think their population is around 40,000, much smaller city than New York. They did a good job. They took it serious. They responded immediately, took action, notified the proper agencies. I think they jumped out right away. Great job. Shout out to Altoona, Pennsylvania. Thank you for your coordinated effort, and thank you for your apprehension of this. What I like to see also in this case, I mean, John, this is a very intelligent kid. He was the valedictorian of his high school. He has a 3-page manifesto that was in his possession. The NYPD has that. I'd like to know what was in that manifesto. So what were the details that would provide his mindset at the time of his homicide? What were the details that would provide in that manifesto to his motivation for this? So what was the MO? What was the MO behind this actual homicide? Again, I think that it was sloppy to be on purpose. I think it was completely intentional. This kid is far too intelligent to make that many mistakes, even when it comes to the use of a firearm. Even if he didn't grow up with firearms, either way, he said you can learn. And John, you and I know it doesn't take that long just to learn the basics. You're not going to be proficient and an expert in firearms, but you can learn the basics of a firearm within a day or two, just enough just to pull off what he pulled off. So, again, what's the MO behind this? I'd like to know the MO. We're all insinuating. We believe the speculation has something to do with insurance based on what was on the ammunition, based on the fact that supposedly a back problem. So, again, but why Brian Thompson? There's other CEOs. Why Brian Thompson? Why, or was Brian Thompson random? Was he waiting for anyone that worked in that company to walk through? We don't know. So these are good questions.
That is definitely a good question. So Luigi, a University of Pennsylvania graduate, comes from a well-off real estate family prominent in the Maryland community. He was raised outside Baltimore and Townsend, and his family owns 2 sprawling country clubs, a local radio station, and several other real estate holdings. In the weeks leading up to the shooting, he became estranged from his friends and family, according to law enforcement sources. Maganone's mother reported him missing on November 18th, possibly from a home in San Francisco where he lived for a time, and reached out to his peers as they tried to track him down. One of his former classmates at the Gilliam School in Baltimore told the Times he believed he went dark after undergoing back surgery months prior. A friend and former roommate in Hawaii also told CNN that Maganone had previously spoken of his back issues. Here is a photo of his back issues with the metal pins in his back. That does appear to be painful. When I interviewed him before he moved in, I remember he said he had a back issue and he was hoping to get stronger in Hawaii, R.J. Martin said. The roommate said Maganone's back issues was so traumatic and difficult that one basic surfing lesson left him bedridden for a week. He underwent surgery, Martin said. His friend sent him images of the x-rays. It looked heinous, with giant screws going in his spine, he said. Other former high school friends said the high-achieving valedictorian went absolutely crazy after his surgery, according to Jack Mack, a staffer at sports and pop culture outlet Barstool Sports. Spoke with the source that had a lot of friends that went to high school at Luigi. What keeps coming up is the back surgery that changed everything for him, and he went absolutely crazy, Mack revealed. Maganone hasn't made any statements since his arrest, law enforcement officials said during an evening press conference in Pennsylvania.
Well, as I said, I was curious to why he was in Honolulu, Hawaii. Well, it just said right there he took a surfing lesson, so maybe he was doing some surfing out in Hawaii. I mean, it appears, like you said, you see the young man is in great shape. Obviously, with this back surgery, took a turn for the worse. His physique has completely changed. But again, is that the MO? It's still conjecture. It's still speculation. I mean, the overwhelming majority of the evidence is pointing that direction. But again, it's just speculation. We still don't know. This is a quite interesting case. It's very perplexed. So I hope within the next coming days, with this administration that we have from the NYPD, which is the least transparent we've ever seen, that they provide this information, because the public has been so delved into this case at this point. They should release this information and then put it to bed at that point. Let's find out the MO. Let's find out how he maneuvered, how he got through from New York City, how he got to Altoona, Pennsylvania, how he escaped capture, why it took 6 days. This is very important when it comes to a case like this, is the post-analysis. I'm sure the squad guys that are on here, active and retired, could actually allude to that. It's very important, the post-analysis. So what they learned from this case, so that other cases going forward, they can apply the same tools and measures to figure out how someone actually navigated capture in 6 days. So yeah, again, is this professional or not, John? It's pretty professional. If you could escape capture with, under a nationwide manhunt at 26 years old, it's pretty professional.
So this is Piers Morgan Uncensored. He has Taylor Lorenz, Tommy Lahren. I forget the other guy's name. Taylor Lorenz is like a podcast host. She's like a online, I don't know what you want to call her now. I guess an online media personality, right? So this comes out yesterday. And again, I'm having a hard time grasping the purpose of this right here. So I'm just going to play it and then we'll get your thoughts.
I do believe in the sanctity of life. And I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it feels like.
Serious?
I mean,
joy in a man's execution?
Maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy. Because again,
we're watching the footage. How can this make you joyful? This guy's a husband, he's a father, and he's being gunned down in the middle of Manhattan. Why does that make you joyful?
Of Americans that be murdered. So are the tens of thousands of Americans, innocent Americans, who died because greedy health insurance executives like this one push policies of denying care to the most vulnerable people. And the many millions of Americans that have watched people that I care about suffer and in some cases die because of lack of health care.
So should they all be killed then? Should they all be killed, these healthcare executives? Would that make you even more joyful?
No, that would not.
Well, why not?
And,
why are you laughing?
I think because it wouldn't fix the
You seem
system.
to find the whole thing hilarious.
I find your question funny.
A bloke's been murdered in the street. I don't find it funny at all.
I don't find it funny that tens of thousands of Americans die every year and because they are denied life-saving healthcare from people like the CEO. Now, I want to fix the system. You're right. We shouldn't be going around shooting each other with vigilante justice. No. I think that it is a good thing that this murder has led to America, or really the media elites and politicians in this country paying attention to this issue for the first time. You mentioned you couldn't understand why somebody would feel this reaction when they watched a CEO die. It's because you have not dealt, it sounds like, with the American healthcare system in the way that millions of other Americans have.
I've dealt with the healthcare system in various ways in America. I don't think it's perfect by any means, but the idea that I would view it as something.
Have you been denied life?
Hang on. The idea that I would view it as something joyful that a man has been, who's just a healthcare executive, has been executed in the street, I find completely bizarre.
She is a crazy I'm not going to say it with you two, but these are some sick people. These are some sick people that they could actually justify in their minds someone being gunned down the street because of the complexities and the failures of insurance. It's the entire system, first of all. It's even, take hold of what's going on with the government, big pharma. It's all these things wrapped in together. But to actually justify it, it's okay to gun somebody down. I mean, he's not the only CEO there. I'm not saying, I don't know Brian Thompson from a hole in the wall. I don't know if he did things wrong, but you know what? John, same thing goes for us. I mean, we've been attacked by the upper echelon of police department. We've been attacked by numerous entities of the police department trying to shut down this podcast. Are we going after them and gunning people down? Absolutely not. I don't wish any harm to these people. I criticize them for their failures, but I don't wish them any harm. This is how we beat them to it. We give our opinion because they hate it. They hate when we give our opinion. But I don't wish anybody physical harm. This girl's sick. I hope she doesn't have any kids.
Yeah, I was blown away when I heard that. I was like, I can't believe what's happening in this country. And it's like, it's over and over again. Like, I continuously hear that she felt joy. I'm like, how could you feel joy about this? This is insane. I'm not going to play too much of this, but I want to bring this in, and then I just want to get to a press conference, and then we can get out of here. We're almost on 2 hours. I want to bring in the illustrious Kaz Daughtry and hear what valuable information that he needed to get right out to Altoona, PA, to speak about. So, but this is Luigi Maganone. He's his high school valedictorian. So we'll play a little bit of his speech. I haven't listened to it yet. I don't know. I just want to see his character and if we see anything here. So let's take a look. Let's listen to a few minutes.
All set. Congratulations. Thank you. Headmaster Smythe, Mr. Hubeck, members of the Board of Trustees, family, friends, faculty, and fellow students, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here to celebrate Gilman's 116th Founders Day. I'm honored to be speaking to you all today on behalf of the Gilman class of 2016. When I started writing the speech, I talked with several students and teachers and asked how they would describe the class of 2016. Many of the students characterized our class as inventive, in both imagination and initiative. At the same time, several teachers reminded me of our class's commitment to Gilman and its traditions. I came to realize that both views are correct. The class of 2016 is truly defined by its inventive, pioneering mentality that accompanies a strong commitment to Gilman tradition. Throughout its time here at Gilman, the class of 2016 has been coming up with new ideas and challenging the world around it. Our selling of Chick-fil-A during lunch, arguably the staple of our class, provides a great example. In our sophomore year, when brainstorming ways to fundraise, we didn't just settle for the usual methods of selling spirit shirts and Christmas trees. In addition to this, we did what seemed impossible given the tight schedule of the school day and began shuttling dozens of Chick-fil-A sandwiches to Gilman between assembly and lunch. Soon, we were selling over 100 Chick-fil-A sandwiches each day, and what became likely one of the most successful class fundraisers in Gilman's history. But our ability to come up with new ideas didn't start then. I've noticed it as long as I've been here, even in my very first year as a sixth grader. If any of you have ever been on Gilman's campus before school starts, You would have noticed that every morning, rain or shine, the turf is filled with middle school students playing soccer, football, and frisbee. That tradition was actually started by the class of 2016. As many of you know, Gilman Middle School offers not one, but 2 recesses per day. But for the class of 2016, that wasn't enough.
All right, I don't think we need to hear any more of that. But I mean, just based upon that, looks like the kid has a bright future to me. I'm not seeing nothing.
Well, he had a bright future.
Well,
I mean,
I'm just saying at that point.
No, I know. I just try to find some humor to this, but yeah, listen. Clearly, you see a kid who's well educated. He's got nice poise and distinction to him. He doesn't appear to me. So I like to look at the face, look at the eyes, get observations. He doesn't appear to be mentally ill or any issues of that sort. Looks physically stable. So clearly, I mean, obviously, he took a turn for the worst. I mean, this is the MO. Everything is pointing in the direction of his back surgery. But could it be something else? Yes. We don't know at this point. But everything's pointing in the direction. But if that's so, even if that's the case, if that's what led him to this, that drove him and his motivation to kill is because of the surgery, why was he so upset with UnitedHealthcare? What was going on with the insurance? So, why not be upset at the doctors? Or maybe he was upset at the doctors. Who knows? Maybe his plan was to take out a CEO from UnitedHealthcare, then maybe take out a doctor also. I mean, clearly we don't know at this point. Eddie West, shout out to you. $28. Listen, we appreciate it. More coffee and donuts to the podcast. I think Eddie West hit us up twice today. Thank you so much, brother. Says, can you guys end the podcast on that finest message that came down yesterday? Multiple cops say it's legit that they received it in their email. Looks like Tish is cleaning house. She's doing something right. Yeah, absolutely. We weren't sure if it's rumor or not, but John was like, you know what, F it, I'm going to put it out anyway. I'm like, yeah, you know what, why not?
No, I actually confirmed it.
You did confirm it. Well, yeah, I wasn't sure if you confirmed it before, but listen, that's good. I think we should definitely go over that. Eddie West, we appreciate it. Absolutely. So we'll end it on that note. Great point. Thank you so much for the coffee and donuts. Donate to the podcast. But again, we don't know, John, honestly. We don't know in this manifesto or what his intentions were. Maybe, as I said, maybe he was looking to take out a CEO. Maybe he was looking to then go on to kill a doctor. We don't know. Plan. But there's a lot of information that has to come out on this manifesto, and if he's actually going to talk. I think, John, you said something earlier, I think, which is important to this case. We may or may not ever find out some legitimate details that are necessary for this case. I think the NYPD will do their best to get as much as possible, along with the coordinates of the FBI. But I think there's a lot of information we may never know. This kid's very intelligent. And again, you see, he's poised, he's well-dressed, he's sharp. For this kid to be sloppy on that day, he was sloppy on purpose. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, Eddie, you didn't have to pay us the $28. We would have did it. Just ask, my brother. But we appreciate you, dude. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. So yeah, we'll definitely end on that. But before we do that, before we get into that, here is Kaz Daughtry speaking in Pennsylvania last night.
So again, I'd like to thank everybody, and it's my honor to introduce Deputy Commissioner Daughtry at this time.
Thank you, Mr. DA. On behalf of the New York City Mayor Eric Adams, my boss, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, wants to extend once again your appreciation to the Aquitted Police Department, to your leadership team, federal, state, local authorities, and especially to the customer at the McDonald's that seen something, says something, the McDonald's employee that called 911 and reported this individual inside their hospital. The men and women behind me, detectives. Some of these detectives that are standing behind me haven't been home since Tuesday when this incident happened. They've been working this case tirelessly around the clock. And when they got that phone call, immediately they jumped in their car, the police car, and race down here to go see if this was the individual they were looking for. That's dedication. That's their commitment to bringing this individual to justice is just standing behind. And on behalf of the mayor and the police commissioner, they extend their thanks and appreciation to you as well. Here's a message to the criminal element that they want to commit a crime in New York City and cross state lines, county lines. The message is very clear. Police Commissioner Tish's police department will find you and bring you to justice. Just look behind you. Thank you.
Does he have a little bit left on his chin? Or, I mean, the commissioner, the mayor want to thank you. Jessica Tish's police department. I tell you, these guys are good. When Ed Caban was the commissioner, they were rooting for Ed Caban. The second he was gone, they drove the bus right over him. Tom Donlin, he was great too. He's gone. Now Jessica Tish, she's the best thing since sliced bread. Hey, guess, you got anything on your face over here? Because it sure looks like you might have a little cream left on your chin. Oh, my God. That was some brown nosing. This is, I think the guys from Altoona looking around like, this is the guy that you brought from the NYPD? Okay. This is it. What do you think, John?
The questions were even funnier, but it would take a while to get into them. But yeah, I just think there was no need. There's just no need. There's no need to talk about it. The message is clear. Hood Mayor says you can get away with it if you mask up and don't take it off. The message is clear that you better not go to McDonald's because the people in there are keen-eyed if you commit a crime. Yeah, I think the grandstanding over the apprehension is insane to me. I don't think it needs to be done. I don't think he needed to be there. I don't think he needed to speak. But if he was there, whatever, and they offered him to speak, whatever. But he's just not good with words, and like everybody says it. Like he hangs on the same thing. He said that same line. He couldn't revert back to the drone, so he reverted back to these people haven't been home. Meanwhile, the cop's like sitting there. The detective behind them is like thinking about how many times he's been home since, So not often, but he's been home, and he just kind of hangs on to whatever. Like when he gets stumbled, he just hangs on to what he's talking about. If they keep letting him speak, he'll get better and better. He's better than when he first got on, but he's just not a good representative. It's just what it is. He's just not a good public speaker. He's never going to be. What was the point of that? I have no idea. You're going to get caught if you come to New York. I agree. Could have just ended it with that. Started and ended with that. Should have been short and sweet. And he likes to drag things on.
John, it wasn't necessary.
Where's John Shell, Logic's finest, says? I don't know.
The bottom line is this wasn't necessary at all. And I think you put a good point to it. It's grandstanding. I mean, the whole point to boast about New York City, and your department, it's not necessary. Just say, listen, it's a coordinated effort. We want to keep everybody safe, and we're working on the details right now. As the details come out, we'll get them to you. Any questions? It's very simple. Sometimes less is more. Naked Coffee, shout out to you, $5 coffee and donuts. Naked Coffee backs Eddie West with an extra coffee. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for people dipping into their pocket, friends and listeners. Absolutely. John, it's just not necessary. It's overkill, of massaging each other. It's not necessary. You don't have to massage the commissioner and the mayor. It's just not necessary. So, Eddie West, upon request, as you asked for, let's get right into this finest message. It's a little grainy. It's a little blurry, but we'll get into it. John, let's start it, and then we'll give our take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, finest message comes out yesterday. All commands subject improper telephone message transfers. An internal audit of command staffing revealed that over 500 uniformed members of the department were improperly transferred from their permanent commands without the required agency documentation and approvals. This practice, commonly referred to as telephone message transfers, has always been unauthorized and results in the department's inability to appropriately account for staffing and ensure sufficient manpower for operational matters. It also contributes to slower response times to critical incidents. Effective immediately, compliance is expected with all current department policies and directives regarding transfers. Further, all impacted members working outside of their permanent commands are to be returned to their permanent command no later than December 13, 2024. This includes members who have expired, temporarily transferred, or modified or restricted members who remained in a command after returning to full duty. Bureau heads are responsible for ensuring full compliance with this directive. For your immediate attention, Authority, Police Commissioner.
So when it comes to that, my question is simple, right? We did a podcast. We had an episode where we actually analyzed the DOI report on the unit known as CRT, which is the Citywide Response Team, also known as your khaki pants boys. So how many, and according to the DOI report, the upper echelon of the police department could not confirm the manpower and the roster for the CRT team for the khaki pants. So my question is, how many telephone transfers were actually done for the CRT team? And if so, will John Schell and the CRT team fall into compliance with this finest message? Or will John Schell and Jeffrey Madry push back on this? Because John Schell, Jeffrey Madry, and of course, Kaz Daughtry, this is their baby. So will they actually push back on this, or will they succumb to this message?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of things going on here. I think, one, you see there's a new sheriff in town. I think this more than likely stemmed from a meeting with the chief of personnel to see where they're at, any issues, any backlogs, any jams. And I think this is something that had to have came out of the chief of personnel officers, who's in charge of transfers. What did I write about this? I thought I gave a decent synopsis of it, but I don't think it's fully in depth. I said, I'm receiving unconfirmed reports from several anonymous sources that more than 500 members of the NYPD were improperly transferred and will be returning back to their permanent command. It appears those in power were circumventing NYPD procedures and the chief of personnel's office, which resulted in the NYPD being unable to properly account for these officers to ensure staffing for operational matters. There appears to be a new sheriff in town. I'm sure several of the mayor's appointed managers are not happy with the NYPD's chief of personnel at the moment. So not only, and I don't think what I wrote is totally on point, because there's a lot of procedure that goes around, and I'm not saying, and some of it might not even be warranted, but there's a lot of procedure as how you could actually get transferred in the NYPD. It's not as simple as you just get a transfer and then the chief of personnel office transfers you. No, it goes through channels. First, it has to go through whatever bureau head you're in. So if you're in patrol, it's going to the chief of patrol. Chief of patrol has to sign off on it. Then it goes up to the chief of department's office for signature. I'm hearing there was a backlog in a certain lieutenant's office with a lot of things that were looking for signature for the chief of department's office, and they never got to the chief of department to sign off on. After that, it must go down to up to the police commissioner, who ultimately signs off and makes the decision. From there, it goes back down to personnel, who will then transfer you officially. So there's a whole slew of signatures that are needed. I don't know if all of them are warranted or not. I never really thought too much about the process. It seems like it's more convoluted than it needs to be. But maybe it's necessary because there are factors that I don't know about. So apparently there was a backlog there of getting out. So again, leads to the inept, inexperience, and lack of supervision, if that's true, in the New York City Police Department Chief of Department's office. Why are these backlogs happening? Why are there 500 people being transferred basically via a phone call? And when we say improper transfers, it's because it didn't go through the proper procedure that the NYPD has in place. So these people are just, it's basically, Eric's transferred, chief of department's office, do the telephone message log. But when you run Eric in the computer, Eric comes up at his old command. So, and now 500 of these people are out there, and we don't know what unit they are, where they are, what tour they're working, who they, so it's a convoluted mess. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening there. And I think this is the first thing you're seeing of, besides her walking around Joe Kenny like he's a child on the stage, this is the first actual action you're seeing from the police commissioner to rein in what's been happening in the New York City Police Department.
Well, I think it also solidifies and validates what we've been saying on this podcast when it comes to nepotism, and nepotism equates to corruption within the police department. We see people promoted by rocket fuel, but also personnel in this police department under prior predecessors of commissioners and under this administration of Eric Adams have been transferred by rocket fuel because of nepotism, and it all equates to corruption. And I think Crazy 10-7 has a great comment here. I think this could be a potential reason. Definitely makes sense. This is all about Marjorie's hook transfers that happened all over the job, including the Pearson paid transfers. This includes very specialized units. It very well could be that. Absolutely, I think you're onto something, but I think ultimately what this comes down to is there was no vision, no direct leadership in this police department, completely circumventing protocol procedure for the NYPD, because this upper echelon does not follow the rules, does not follow policies, and goes down to rules for thee and not for me. And that's this administration, and that's this upper echelon of the police department. This is a complete failure because they circumvented the actual system. We're losing accountability. So I will say, shout out to Jessica Tisch on this one. That's a good move to take back the reins and to make sure that everyone's held accountable and to make sure that everyone's being properly utilized in the police department. Are the people that being transferred, are they being utilized in some unit that doesn't make sense? Maybe 86 some odd people in a social media unit, were they actually transferred there by actually applying, or were these people also telephone calls also because they were investigating and monitoring this podcast? So it leads to a lot of questions about maneuvering and about manpower in this police department.
Yeah, so I have people saying that there's actually way more than 500 people, that there's actually over 80 in a certain command that have gotten that via telephone. Also being told that there are people receiving special pay via telephone message as well. I don't know how true or not it is. I'm just getting that in. Wouldn't shock me. Wouldn't shock me at all. I think that, that there's been some stuff. There has been a lot of procedure and policy in place in the NYPD for a reason. And I think out of not understanding the procedure and policy, sort of like what I just said, where I'm just like, I don't think those checks are necessary. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But just go ahead and attacking it like, oh, it's taken forever for these transfers to get through, we're just going to circumvent that policy. That's a failure in leadership again, because that's something, that's exactly what a leader needs to do, is especially when you're now an administrator, when you're looking from an administrative point of view. And I do have a lot of experience in this. I was in the units that I served in, both as a sergeant and a lieutenant, where I was the commanding officer of those units. What I would look for is backlogs, right? Where is the stick point? Like, we're having a problem, identify the problem. So the problem is, all right, these transfers are taking forever. Why are those transfers taking forever? What happens? Walk me through the process. Walk me through the process. Okay, I submit my transfer. It goes to my CO. My CO signs off on it. Now it goes to the chief of department's office, and it's stuck there for 3 months. Okay. Go to the chief of department. Why does it take 3 months for signature for you? Why does it take 3 months? Oh, it shouldn't take 3 months. I don't know what's going on. Right? You just solved the problem. Now what's going to happen? He's going to go to who gets that. Why am I not getting these? Let's clear this up. Boom. And now your backlog's gone. And then if you hit a certain stick point further along that way, you're going to look at that stick point again. Okay. All right. We solved the problem with the chief of department's office. How long does it take when it goes to the police commissioner's office? What are you guys looking for? Okay. All right. Some of them are not going to get through, but why does it take this long? Transfers, decisions on transfers need to put, and then you put a policy in place. Decisions on transfers shouldn't take more than 4 weeks to come down, whether they're approved or disapproved. It shouldn't take more than 4 weeks. And maybe there's a time frame for each borough. You have 7 business days to respond. You have 15 business days to respond. Whatever it is, you implement that time frame. You find where the stick point is, and then everybody understands the process, right? So when I have people that work under me that want to get transferred to places, they understand how the transfer process works. So they understand, listen, it's going to take me 3 months. If for each time they have this time frame, it traditionally takes 3 months. It may be sooner than that time frame, depending. But at least you don't have people sitting in limbo forever, not knowing whether they are or not going to get transferred. And then the major failure is you're in leadership and you don't identify where the stick point is. And you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to circumvent the whole thing. And we're just going to go around it. And now there's a breakdown. There's a total, utter breakdown in the way things happen in this job.
Rob Lucas, shout out to you. I think this is hilarious. The stick point in the chief of department's office was filling out overtime slips. Absolutely, you nailed it, brother. But what does this also do, John? This also leads to the lies and the gaslighting by this police department. So the question is, did this administration do it intentionally? Is this on purpose? Because it distorts the manpower. The numbers that we've said that they've been providing to the public are a complete lie. So it's possible, right? They're double dipping, right? Someone gets temporarily transferred under a phone message, now increases the roster in their new command. And if they're not coming off the old command, they're actually showing up in 2 different spots. So that changed the actual manpower numbers that the police department has. And they could actually give different numbers to the public when they gaslight and lie about the manpower. Because we talked about the manpower is clearly far diminished from what they're providing to the public. So I think this could actually be done intentional by the past administration under the predecessors of Ed Command and Tom Donlin. So, again, Jessica Tisch, from an administrative point of view, also a position of leadership. You know, when you're in a position of leadership, especially this administration that needs and requires changes because of ineffectiveness, inadequacies, and inept leadership that we have, she's immediately making changes. So that is necessary. Hopefully this change does solve those issues. But I do suspect that this could be intentional for those reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Orchard, New York says there are no backlogs. They have been hiding people and details. I never never change their commands for years. And the commands suffer because they appear to be more people than they actually do. And yeah, that's absolutely probably another factor. I'm just saying, if that's the excuse, right? Because that's, I believe, where they're going to go. Oh, the process takes forever. We needed people immediately. I need people for my drone thing. I need people for this. I need people for that. I'm just saying, I would not doubt that for 1 second, that they're just moving people, hiding them there. And I wouldn't doubt the promotional thing either. I mean, it should be looked into. Again, I believe that the entire upper echelon of the NYPD, every office needs to be thoroughly audited. I don't believe the people that are in place should remain in place. And I've said that over and over again. Probably the only person I'm leaving in their spot, the only 2 people I would leave is crime control strategies, chief of transit, and chief of detectives. Everybody else, and even them, would be on the hot seat. Not necessarily the chief of transit because he just got there. They'd be on the hot seat, but I would have new people in charge of chief of patrol, especially internal affairs. 100, because what have they been doing? What has the chief of internal affairs been doing? We don't know. I know where he's been hanging out, and he's been hanging out in places he shouldn't be. And the investigations in that office have been stalled till today. Me and Eric still don't know who threatened our children. He's out there lurking, right? Right? Oh no, but they're worried. They're worried about his safety, Eric, because they don't want us to retaliate against him. The NYPD is more concerned over perpetrators than they are for the victims. That's the new NYPD. Well, not really, but that's just how they feel about us, you know, because they would love nothing more than to wake up and say, "Oh yeah, it's tragedy, terrible would happen. I can't believe it happened."
Yeah, I'd like to know if All Cops Are Woke has a manifesto. But that's it. Listen, we'll always be a situation where we're not afraid, not going to back down, but we're absolutely the police. I guess the podcast shuts down. You know, Dudley Brothers, Gotham Brothers, whoever, all these, people be excited by it, but, who cares? But the bottom line is, listen, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in this police department, this administration, that's very suspicious, very skeptical. I'm very skeptical this was done intentionally for those reasons, for manpower. And you're right. Listen, if you have a problem with the system, then you should circumvent it. And I think, John, you're being quite generous. And I have to be honest, if it was me, even people that I like, people that I know, this is a cancer that needs to be cut out. Everyone needs to go at the upper echelon of the police department. Everyone. I'm sorry. Every one of those chiefs is infected and compromised. Everyone. Chief of Transit, every single one of them did not say a word because they know. They know what's right and wrong. You know how they know? Look how Chief Kenny operates and acts when he's with Jessica Tisch. It's far different. Cass Dorsey will act different. So will John Shell. So they know the difference from right and wrong. So you know what, John? They're all compromised. They're all infected. They got to go. Bums. Get rid of those bums. Start over. Start over. There's good people within the ranks. You know what? Find the good people in the ranks that are knowledgeable. Promote some of them to rocket fuel and start over. Since Kaz Dorsey was promoted to rocket fuel, find some of those people that you know that are knowledgeable, promote them to rocket fuel that maintain integrity, and then start over. And then we'll find the right people to move up in the police department.
So, listen, before we get out of here, I think tomorrow, we've been on here for a while. I think tomorrow we will talk about the Sergeant Detective Squad who was arrested for petty larceny. I think we'll weigh in on that tomorrow. But real quick, Mike Freed. Mike Freed's been our unpaid behind-the-scenes producer, as well as Marlon Bethel. Mike Freed just sent me an interesting video with the murder suspect Rocco Mangione. Just want to pull that up on the screen real quick. Hold on, I'm getting that into where I could have it. All right, where we at? Excuse me. Before we get that up, we did a podcast last night with Inspector Ron Layson. That'll be out either later in the week or during the holidays. We haven't decided on that fact yet. We will be conducting more interviews in the future. We have a few people lined up, a lot of good guests. So, and those will come out as recorded episodes, not lives. So we'll continue to bring you different content. So here's the video. Here is Rocco being escorted into the police car. I believe to be extradited because, like we said, he's going up on charges for the weapons possession in Pennsylvania, but in New York, that is where he will face murder charges. So here we go. Here's Rocco Mangione being escorted.
Down.
Whoa, back up. That's completely out of touch. And it's an insult to the intelligence of the American people and lived experience.
So he said that this is completely unjust and this is an insult to the intelligence of the American people. What do you think, Eric? Should he be allowed to speak to reporters before he gets brought in?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, clearly this kid wants attention, right? Again, that's why I believe he was sloppy on purpose. I believe that he actually wants attention, which is also, indicative of the monopoly money, the scripture that was on the ammunition, the fact that he was so sloppy. I mean, he's so intelligent that he's cocky and arrogant, and he's cocky and arrogant here also. He's a little unhinged at this point. I don't know if it has something to do with the prescriptions, but obviously he's not mentally stable. He's completely unhinged at this point. But no, he should not be speaking to reporters. Absolutely not.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people upset about this, especially the press, calling for transparency, that he should be allowed to make a statement. I agree that he should be allowed to make a statement. I just don't know right at this moment in time. I'm not going to agree with. One, for his safety and the safety of everybody else, because if anybody thinks that he himself is not a target now, you're out of your mind. So the police are removing him out of that situation. And then they're also keeping the reporters and the public safe from him at the same time. So I have no problem with them bringing him into into the cell. Like I said, if months go by and we never get a statement, or if he doesn't want to give a statement because his lawyer doesn't want to give a statement, but at some point, I think he should be able to give a statement. And, I think, and Moreland brings up a point too. He says it's a tough question. He says, but he should be able to, he didn't say he should be able to give a statement. He just says here, so he can't be Lee Harvey Oswald. So what Marlon Bethel's referring to is the assassination of JFK. When Lee Harvey Oswald was brought into for questioning from the Dallas PD, he was under questioning for the assassination of John F. Kennedy. He said to the police, the only thing he said to the police was, "You think you got me, but they got you." And then when Lee Harvey Oswald was to be moved out of the, I believe it was out of the courthouse, if I'm not mistaken. It was out of the courthouse or the jail. I forget. I haven't read about this in a while. But wherever he was being moved, at one point he was being moved, and he was supposed to get moved for, let's just say at 1 o'clock. And at 1 o'clock, he doesn't get moved. And then at 1:30, he doesn't get moved again. And then at 2 o'clock. And then at 2:30, he walks out of wherever he was, whether it was court or the police station. I can't remember. And then a man by the name of Jack Ruby assassinates him. So we never actually got to hear Lee Harvey Oswald's story. We never got to hear. We also never got to hear Jeffrey Epstein's story. So I think, I understand the concern. I understand the concern is that the public wants to hear this man, and maybe there should be some type of setting for the accused to be able to give a public statement. But right here on the street, I don't believe is the time.
No, this is definitely not the time. First of all, the safety concerns have to be addressed. He has to be away from the public. Absolutely. Because if there is some type of deep state issue going on, he absolutely has to be protected for that reason, of course. And that's a great example Marlon brought up of Lee Harvey Oswald and, of course, Jack Ruby. There's been so many movies on that. So, should there be a statement at a time? Obviously, we have to find out, did he confer with counsel? Did he say under Miranda warnings that he's willing to speak? Because we also, if that's the case, if he lawyered up and he said he doesn't want to speak, then we don't want him making a statement to the reporters at this time, because that statement could ultimately be thrown out if there's a potential trial. If he makes a statement, he could say it's under duress. He say he's being pumped by reporters. So the best thing is to get him into the car and in a controlled environment as soon as possible, and then they can arrange for statements. But this is definitely not the time for it. There's no doubt in my mind. And of course, at this point also, we don't know what his plan is for his defense attorneys. Is it going to be some type of insane, a sense of being insane? Is he mentally deranged at this point? What his defense is going to be for his lawyer? So that could hurt the case also. He could be saying anything. He's not mentally stable at this time. He needs, does he need medicine? Does he need aid? So I think this is not the time for statements for those reasons.
Yeah, I don't think on the street is a time for that. Also, Ariel says he should not have a voice. I disagree, and I also understand that he could potentially inspire others too, but the accused should be able to have somewhat of a voice. I mean, if you were accused of a crime, God forbid, I'm not saying that this is the case here, but God forbid you were wrongfully charged with a crime, you would want the ability to speak to the American public. You'd want the ability to vocalize what's going on. And I can't say that I wouldn't want the same. So regardless of the crime, I don't think we're going to take away the person's voice. Maybe we don't elevate it, but I don't think we're going to take it away. But I 100% agree. This is not the time and the place for him to hold a presser or for the media. He will have access to make phone calls and stuff like that. And so it's a real tough call. I mean, the American people want to know, but like I said, I don't think that the height of the investigation is we need to know everything at the time, but I wouldn't strip the man's tongue out because he's accused of something. Evidence looks strong, but again, that video of the shooter, how do you know that that's him?
Well, that's the hard pressed look at this that we have to be honest that no matter what, even though the firearm was apprehended, the appearance appears the same. He has a manifesto, and with all this damning evidence, he's still innocent until proven guilty. And so you're right, and I agree. We all have a voice, but there's a time and a place for everything. This is not the time. This is not the place. It's still heightened. There's still, his safety is at risk. The safety of the police officers. If there is some type of deep state, if someone wants to take him out, we have police officers there that are in the way, and there could be a lot of harm. So they have to get him out of that vehicle during that transport and in a controlled environment as soon as possible. And of course, in a case like this, we don't want to lose this case on a technicality. So they have to be very careful and make sure they don't do anything that's going to taint this. Don't have him speak if he's under mental duress, if he needs medical, if he needs aid, what's advised by counsel. Ultimately, he's going to be provided counsel, whether he asks for it or not. So I don't think any statement, in my opinion, I don't think any statement in this case should be made without the presence of counsel. For that reason, he should be allowed to make a statement if he chooses to at some time, right? They could set up with legal counsel and have a reporter come in, but I don't think at any point should it be done without counsel. This is a very important case. And someone said he shouldn't have a voice. Well, he should have a voice, right? It's very important. We need his voice. For one, it's his First Amendment right to speak. And he's also innocent to proven guilty, but we want him to talk. Ultimately, the goal is to have him talk. We want to know what his motive was, what he carried out. Ultimately, the analysis of this case should help and be investigative tools for law enforcement going further in potential other cases. Eddie West, shout out to you, man. Talk about coffee and donuts, Baker's dozen. I think Eddie West is buying us a TV over here. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays, brother. $20 dipping into his pocket again. Shout out to you guys, Eric and John, the voice of the voiceless for the rank and file. Keep on pushing, brothers. Keep on pissing off the leadership because you speak the truth. Cigars on me, coffee, donuts, and cigars. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I look forward to it. I hope, Eddie West, that we plan that in the future. That's the goal one day, John and I. Hopefully one day can get a nice event together, especially cigars. And, I'd love to share a cigar with you and a cup of coffee, of course. So, thank you, Eddie West. And I hope that we went over that finest message, as far as what you were looking for. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Shout out to Stephen Lee. Steve, yeah, we stream went down. We haven't been on since the morning. We did speak about it. You can rewind it. Appreciate you being on here, brother. Actually, give me a call. I haven't spoken to you in a while. I'll give you a buzz soon. I hope everything's going good with you. I'm going to say, though, I'm going to push back a little bit with the counsel thing, only that at some point he needs to be given the opportunity to speak. If he does have counsel, then yes, it should be with counsel. You're not required to have legal counsel in this country. I could be my own attorney if I so choose. So at some point, I could say, no, I'm defending myself. I don't trust you or anybody you're giving me, and I don't want my own attorney. If he has an attorney, obviously that statement should be done with counsel. If he does not have an attorney, I'm assuming his family's getting him an attorney. But if he doesn't have an attorney, he does have the right to not say that. So to at some point put a statement out.
You're right, but usually it's crazy people that don't want an attorney. I mean, like Ted Bundy. I mean, it's pretty crazy if you're in a situation like this and you want counsel. You're right. You have the right to go pro se, but I would assume with a family of this type of wealth that they will convince him, to have an attorney.
Yeah, and Ariel says we don't want him to make any statements that encourage this kind of behavior for the change he is seeking. Listen, that's the double-edged sword with freedom of speech. Again, I'm a free speech absolutist, so I I understand your concerns, but I won't rip out anybody's tongue. Say what you will. Show us who you are. Show us how you think. Eric alluded to it before. I think the ultimate goal of the investigators at this point is to have him talking, to understand his intentions and the intent and what happened here. So why wouldn't we let him talk?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a gift. I mean, thank God for the mouthpiece, right? It's a gift that how we solve most crimes is that people talk or other people talk. It's very important that he talks in this case. I just think that it should be with legal counsel. Like you said, you can't pro se. I highly doubt in a case like this that'd be really stupid. But yeah, that's the valuable tool is what he says, what information he provides. If there's accomplices involved in this, who helped him in any form. I highly doubt he did this completely on his own. Is it possible? Yes, but I would put my money that there are some people that helped him in some way, in some shape or form, whether it was to maneuver, to get out of New York City, help him plan this. But he had some form of help in some way, shape, or form. And that's going to be a very important of what he says to get him talking. So that may be also, with legal counsel, that may be part of his case to get him a better sentence and a chance of parole one day. Maybe, with legal counsel and what information he provides, if any, to bring this entire case to closure. I'm sure that's going to be worked out. And being thorough, getting as much information as possible with this case is going to be very valuable with this case. And that's going to be the leverage for the defense to get him a chance of coming out one day, right? He's still a young man. So even if he was to serve 40 years in jail, the life expectancy for a man that's 78 years old, he'd still have a somewhat of a life left. So, again, and hey, listen, for the squad guys that are on here, friends and listeners, thank you so much for your input. It's really valuable. You guys, did extensive amount of stuff. I'm sure you've been familiarized with this kind of, so we really appreciate your input. And Marlon, a lot of great comments today. Steven, shout out to you, Steve. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, hopefully we speak soon. And AJ, thank you for always being here, and we appreciate it. And Juju, we thank you too.
Before we end, Juju just wants to know if this is white on white crime. Juju, I don't care what it is. If it's black on black crime, black on white crime, it's abhorrent. We should do everything to alleviate all types of violence, unnecessary violence that occurs anywhere that it takes place. If you want to deem it as white on white, if you want to label people because of the skin tone, it's actually not. It's light-skinned on white crime, right? Because they identified Luigi as a light-skinned individual. So whatever you want to say, it's all up to conjecture. If that's how you feel you would like to label this horrific murder, then call it that. But again, I'm going to say right now, it appears that the shooter is Luigi Manganello. But can we all say right now 100% that it's him? I don't think at this point anybody could still make that claim. He's the accused. He looks like the suspect. Apparently he had the firearm. All these facts still need to come out. They will come out. We'll learn all of them. So just keep that in mind. That's it.
So obviously Juju's trying to compare some type of measure or standard in comparison when it comes to this case and the Daniel Penny, Jordan Neely case. Completely you can't compare. Whether you decide one's a murder or if you decide that Jordan Neely was killed, if that's the way you feel, there's completely different cases. First of all, this case here and the victim of Brian Thompson, this was completely premeditated. This was targeted. This was planned out. This is very devious. So even if your belief is that Daniel Penny committed, in fact, a crime, if you believe it was a murder, far different than this case. It was not premeditated. It was not planned. It was an adverse outcome. So we can't even compare. This is completely different. So, of course, Juju just likes to poke holes. Got nothing better to do, but, we appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, people. All right, thanks for joining us. Tomorrow we'll definitely weigh in on the sergeant that was arrested. We'll give our thoughts around that, and appreciate you all for the little hiccups we had this morning. I'm not really sure what it was. I reset everything. It appears to be working fine now. So thanks everybody for joining us in the afternoon. All friends, thank you guys. I consider Juju a friend too, and I consider him, I think Sal Greco said he was the jester for the show, and I think that's I think he is. I think we should call him the jester, the court jester from now on.
Well, I think Juju's coming in many forms here. I think he's definitely linked up with Dudley Brother, Labro, a couple others. You know what? Listen, like you said, we don't push trolls out of here. Let's get to the point that you're really disrupting the podcast the way we can't carry on. We have a pretty tolerable, we got thick skin, unlike some of your bosses. But I just want to say, listen, thank you for being patient with us and the inconvenience, but we managed to carry it out today. We will be here tomorrow. I think it's a great case to take a look at with this sergeant that was actually arrested for shoplifting. Quite interesting, very small nominal amount that she stole. I think it comes down to kleptomania. Some pictures are surfacing of her, kind of like scandals. I don't want to comment too much on if we're going to do it tomorrow. Some pictures are coming out of the way she's dressed. See, that's not what this is about, but this is about actually her case, and we can make some comparisons to others. So let's come here tomorrow with an open mind. We'll see you in the morning, of course, 8:05 live Eastern time. I'll be up early Pacific time. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it. Finest Unfiltered. Like and subscribe. Share this out on X, and take care. We'll see you tomorrow.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888 901 Blue. That's 888 901 Blue.